You're smoking some of the best dope God ever put breath in.
Thank God it's Friday!
Drop it. All right, power panel. Cenk Uygur, John Idarola, Nina Turner. How you doing, Nina?
Great to be here with you.
All right.
How's it going, Nina?
All right.
How you doing?
All right, Senator Nina Turner joining us. All right, this is going to be a great power panel. On my way in, I was thinking, okay, don't lose your cool, because we do have an Israel story, and then the attacks against Mamdani are so racist. I just can't take it. All right, so we'll see what happens. Everybody brace for impact.
Keep your cool. I already told the whole crew like 3 hours ago. It's like Cenk's not gonna make it through this without blowing up.
Yeah, I know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And I saw this super powerful movie last night that I'm gonna tell you guys more about later. But let's get started.
Okay, let's do it. Actually, we're gonna start off with this. Actually, no, we can jump right into this.
Well, this was a big one, wasn't it? This was a big decision. An amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour.
Okay, so Grandpa's train of thought fell apart a little bit at the end there, but it is a big day, not only for President Donald Trump, but any aspiring autocrat who wants the power to trample not only what Congress is constitutionally obligated to do, but the Supreme Court, lower courts as well. And so they announced earlier today that what he wants, which is an end to a lower court ruling that was temporarily blocking his bid to end birthright citizenship, he got it. And he got it not only in the birthright citizenship case, but effectively, it could be that for all cases in which lower courts try to even temporarily block Donald Trump's executive decrees, they won't be able to do that in the future. And that has only like the widest of implications. So we're gonna get into all of it, the arguing, where we go from here. But Cenk, what do you think?
Yeah, real quick, the substance of this decision is not that bad or important. In fact, it doesn't even exist. I'll explain that in a little bit after we give you all the details of the story. But the process argument made here is a disaster. So it's important why it's a disaster, and that's what we're gonna explain to you after you get all the details first.
Yeah, I think it's a disaster on like 7 different levels. And hearing Donald Trump announce it as a win for the Constitution and the separation of powers, I mean, that's your Orwellian, bizarro world reversal of the truth. And Donald Trump here, of course, as president, not happy that these nationwide injunctions are happening. And I would love to see one example of him when he wasn't president arguing against a nationwide injunction stopping a president. If a nationwide injunction stopped Joe Biden, did he ever say that that was a court exceeding its authority? No, of course, they cheered it. They thought it was the best thing ever. And in this case, they have their conservative supermajority on the court, and so most of the time, the right is gonna get what it wants, and this is what happened here. 6-3 ruling, as we've come to expect, the liberal justices dissenting. Now, Cenk mentioned substance. This does not actually rule on whether birthright citizenship will continue to be a constitutionally guaranteed right as it has been for over 150 years. They'll get to that at some point, I suppose. This is just going to allow, after a 30-day pause, the resumption of whatever it is that Trump decides to do when it comes to birthright citizenship. So it is looking like in the majority of states, it will not be a right for a day or a month or 2 years or forever, however long it takes the Supreme Court to eventually circle back around to this crucial topic. But don't get too down on them. It does take a lot of time to figure out whether something that's clearly stipulated in the Constitution is in fact constitutional. Can you tell that I'm not happy about this? So here is what Amy Coney Barrett said, writing for the majority in this case. By the end of the Biden administration, we had reached a state of affairs where almost every major presidential act was immediately frozen by a federal district court. The trend has continued. During the first 100 days of the second Trump administration, district courts issued approximately 25 universal injunctions. As the number of universal injunctions has increased, so too has the importance of the issue. Basically saying there that now both sides are they're doing too much of this, and judges at the lower levels are allowing it too often. And then she throws her hands up in the air and says, it's impossible for us to quickly adjudicate whether an executive order or action is on its face explicitly unconstitutional. So rather than engaging on a case-by-case basis with something like 24 lower court rulings, instead we'll just allow the president to do effectively whatever he wants. Seems like a dereliction of their duty. So that's the majority. Justice Sotomayor, writing for the minority in this case, says, with the stroke of a pen, the president has made a solemn mockery of our Constitution. Rather than stand firm, the court gives way. The court's decision is nothing less than an open invitation for the government to bypass the Constitution. This is so, Sotomayor goes on to say, because the administration may be able to enforce a policy even when it has been challenged and found to be unconstitutional by a lower court. And by the way, we've already had many instances in just the past few months where the Trump administration has made very clear that even when a court order is still standing, they're just not going to abide by it. We found out that one of his nominees for, I believe, an appeals court judicial position was advising the lawyers in the DOJ, just don't pay attention to it. You don't have to follow literally any of that. So we know, and the members of the SCOTUS know, exactly what the Trump regime's approach to the separation of powers, and in particular the judiciary is. They know all of that, and yet they are still delivering, not every single time, but in the vast majority of cases, more power to the Trump administration. Perhaps the administration in American history least qualified or deserving of the increased powers that are being delegated to them. So we have more, we have videos, but we should probably jump into discussion.
Yeah, so first thing that I want everybody to recognize is, John mentioned it, but I want to double down on it so people don't panic. This is not to take away birthright citizenship. They have not decided anything about that. They've remanded it to the lower courts to go back up. They do this all the time. They send it back down to have it go back up, okay? And so because they're ruling quickly, theoretically, right? And so they have another 30 days here, and then it'll go into effect. Okay, so, and again, the birthright citizenship ban is not adjudicated, right? They have not made a decision. Okay, so then what is gonna happen? Well, this is the awful part of this ruling, and it's preposterous, and I have a couple of theories as to why they did this. So let me give you an example. So they're saying no nationwide injunction, even if the president seems to do something blatantly, obviously constitutional. So this is blatantly and obviously constitutional. Why? Birthright citizenship is in the 14th Amendment. It's been adjudicated by the court multiple times. There's massive precedent over it. There's no question about it, right? So, okay, here's another thing that's been adjudicated a lot, which is torture is a violation of the 8th Amendment, right? And so if the president says, you know what, I'm gonna start doing torture now, you can't do a nationwide injunction on it. So what they would have to do is, according to this ruling, only the people who sued who had already been tortured, or the states that say, hey, I would not like to torture, it applies to them, an injunction applies to them, okay? But not to any of the other states, and not to the people who are about to get tortured. Okay, that makes no sense. Do we have a constitution or don't we have a constitution? You can't say, oh, the Constitution applies only to people who sue. Wait, did you get it? The second problem, that means now there's going to be a flood of lawsuits because nobody wants to get tortured, right? So now that's a comparison, analogy, but in this case, there is already a flood of lawsuits because people are like, oh, okay, well, I was born in America, or my kid's about to be born in America. I'm pregnant, or or my kid just got born in America, but I'm not in one of those states. So now I have to go file a lawsuit to make sure that my kid's rights aren't taken away. We could have a ridiculous, enormous amount of lawsuits. By the way, some states have already, and groups and human rights groups have already started suing, right? So what are we doing here? This is so dumb. So look, I think that the right way to do this is, when I get the issue with a nationwide injunction, you know what I always do, shoe on the other foot, right? So Biden had a lot of his stuff blocked by nationwide injunctions, and I didn't like some of the stuff that was blocked. Like, I wanted it to go through. Student debt relief was one that was blocked, right? And it takes forever to get out of the block. So they should have a rule. This is a fair thing, that if you're gonna do a nationwide injunction on some constitutional issues that are necessary, then the case gets significantly expedited, right? Okay, that makes sense, because is it constitutional or not? We gotta adjudicate that right away. And we have to stop the president from doing unconstitutional things in the meanwhile. But if it turns out it's not unconstitutional, then he can go forward. So that makes sense. This doesn't. They're gonna reverse this at some point. I don't know how long it'll take, but this will clog up the courts. It's a super dumb decision. So why do they do it? Here's my very generous theory, and you feel free to totally not believe it, and we'll see how it actually plays out. Is that, since what Trump is doing is so obviously unconstitutional, they're gonna have to rule against it when it comes back up to the Supreme Court. Otherwise, they're just throwing out a huge chunk of precedent and how we interpret the Constitution in America. It'll have enormous ramifications on the substance, right? No, I hear you. I hear you. That's why I say, everyone's free to totally not believe me on this one. Okay, you're all released. Okay, no, seriously. I think that they have to rule against them. So part of what I think Roberts is doing here, in my opinion, is splitting the baby and going, on the procedural stuff, Donald Trump is so right. So right. Now, don't get mad at us later when we tell you that he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about when it comes to the Constitution. So that feels like a Roberts type of compromise. But the good part hasn't happened yet. Only the bad part has happened. So Nina, what do you think?
Well, Cenk, I hope you're right about that. It's hard for me to put faith in Roberts, but what you're saying, it makes sense. It makes too much sense. So I hope that you're right. But on the face of what is happening right now, the point that John was making, the court totally abdicated its responsibility, cut the legs out from under other courts. And I really do think that this court is calling President Donald J. Trump their daddy. I really do. I mean, it's as sick as all of this is with the daddy stuff, the t-shirts and all of that. But it just feels like this. And this man is celebrating. You got people who are hungry, people who need health care, all the things that this president could be doing with his power, but he steps up to a mic in the press room to celebrate a so-called victory, which is really no victory at all for the vast majority of people in this country, because they come for immigrants. Eventually, they're coming for everybody else. I mean, there is no red line for Donald J. Trump. This is not good.
By the way, I have been dreading later in the show when I have to present the daddy story and ask Senator Nina Turner to talk about it, and she actually brought it up first. So now I feel a little bit better about that whole thing. So look, my concern is that, like, Amy Coney Barrett's like, the Republicans did this a lot to Biden. Yeah, but like, can the Supreme Court not tell the difference between a frivolous attempt to block something that is definitely within the power of the executive branch and something that seems intentionally designed to violate the Constitution? And it's not even just this. It's not even just like they found the birthright citizenship and they were like, yeah, you know what? Some of the white supremacists have voted for us don't like this, so we're gonna get rid of this. I mean, they're dispatching the military to US citizens. They've now taken over 250 miles of the southern border and said, yeah, that's actually all of a military base, so the military can arrest migrants in there. They're case after case, they are just trying to find the few remaining limitations on executive power and knock them down. This is where the Supreme Court has to act expeditiously, particularly in cases of life and death. I mean, maybe it's the case that they do end up ruling on this in a month and it never goes into effect, or very soon after that. But when you combine the willingness of Donald Trump to now start choosing who gets to be a citizen and who doesn't, scary in the first place, with his nonstop horniness to deport people, you could have kids that are born that should by rights be citizens but won't be. The only possible protection they have under this lawless regime to not be sent to El Salvador or South Sudan or Alligator Alcatraz or Guantanamo, and then he deports them. And the Supreme Court, we're just waiting around. I hope they get back in session and pick this up. But maybe the kid is now in South Sudan. So what's gonna happen once they get their citizenship retroactively reapplied? The Trump administration is gonna fly him back over? Boy, I hope they weren't assaulted or robbed or sexually abused or murdered in the meantime. Like if there's any time where the Supreme Court has to act, it's the easiest thing in the world. If in 4 years, President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez signs an executive order that just says, oh, by the way, y'all can't own guns anymore, do you think the Supreme Court's gonna be like, well, let's not be hasty. No nationwide injunctions, and we'll think about it. We'll get back to you in 2 years. You know damn sure they're not gonna do that. They acted quicker on student debt relief than something that seems designed to give the double middle finger to the Constitution.
Yeah. You're stealing my thunder, and you're stealing the thunder of one of the members that I was about to read.
Oh, really?
Okay.
What's that?
So on Twitch, Drenched Wildfire said, seems like a really bad precedent for the GOP's agenda to set for President AOC. Okay, so, and the reason I wanted to read that is similar to what you said, John, but I'll make a prediction on it. I know procedurally that this will lead to a giant mess. It's totally untenable. They'll have to reverse themselves on this decision, right?
Just in time for
the exactly. So as you were talking, John, and I'm reading Drenched Wildfire's comment, I thought, oh, I know when they're gonna reverse it. As soon as there's a Democratic president and they need a nationwide injunction on something, they're like, well, it turns out this is a procedural mess. Cenk was right, we're reversing it. I'm sure they'll throw that in. And then I'm gonna do one last member for me at least. John Bogino on TYT.com wrote in, already funny. If we get rid of birthright citizenship, what claim do any of us have to being an American? Well, so that leads to 2 points. I'm gonna feel really good about this because I feel like naturalized citizens should have the same rights as everyone else, including the right to run for president. But it turns out now we have more rights than you guys, because none of you are citizens anymore. If the substance of this stays, by definition, you all kind of have to prove that you had American parents or some other documentation. Whereas naturalized citizens, by definition, are naturalized. We already proved it. We have the documentation. So I'm gonna need to see all your papers, okay? And think about how ridiculous that is, because in the states that didn't sue, right now, they have to start asking the parents, are you American or not? And there's no way to verify. So, and there's no system for the doctors or nurses or the hospital to verify. So they don't know what to write on the birth certificate. It's so monumentally dumb. So there's going to be potentially thousands and thousands of kids that have birth certificates that are unclear as to whether they're US citizens or not. And then what are you gonna do with all those cases? This is so dumb, it hurts the mind to think about it. All right, last word goes to Nina.
Thanks, Cenk. I was thinking about the administrative nightmare. It is a nightmare, but you think about the amount of money that hospitals are gonna have to spend, states will have to spend, or counties will have to spend to create a system to be in line with this dumbness. And then another point I wanna make, what good is a lifetime appointment? You're supposed to have courage, right? I thought, have a little extra courage, because I think if you run for office, you should have courage anyway. Don't worry so much about the next election. Do all that you can in the one that you just won. But especially when you have a lifetime appointment, you're supposed to be able to do more of the right thing. But this particular Supreme Court has shown time and time again that it is not willing to do so. I mean, they act like their names are on the ballot or something. Am I missing something?
Exactly.
Do they still have lifetime appointments?
It feels like longer than one lifetime.
Yeah, they always, like whenever there's a Republican president, they're always like feeling out, public opinion and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, but whenever it's anything related to corporations, money, and politics, they're like, who cares about public opinion? No, you guys don't have a democracy anymore. Corporations, you're now human beings, and you could spend unlimited money bribing our politicians. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, then they never check the polls, because that poll's at 7%. in popularity, but oh well.
Yeah, well, we're gonna take a break. As we go to the break, I want to give the conservatives an additional thing to think about. Not only the precedent this is setting for President Buttigieg or whatever, who will not be bound by lower court decisions, but also Donald Trump announced in his little victory speech today that one of the reasons he's right about birthright citizenship is because it was only intended to apply to newly freed slaves. Now, obviously, it doesn't say that in the Constitution, but he's saying ignore the literal text of the Constitution and add whatever context you want. That is the official position of your dear leader. I think that we can run with that in the future.
Especially for the Second Amendment.
Exactly. Lots changed since then. Anyway, so we're gonna take a break. We'll be back after this.
All right, so you got a message for John Idarola?
Tell him to be nice to me.
Let's go to our members, TYT.com. Chocolate Addicted Dragon says, happy Power Panel Friday, Dragons. What a great panel with Dragon Daddy, Black Pearl Dragon, and Justice Dragon. I'll keep the chocolate flowing for all. Boy, with the bitterness of politics, I do declare we need multiple sweet chasers to get the taste out of our mouths. I like that you're really living up to your handle, and I appreciate all the shout outs and the chocolate. Doodle Dragon Imran writes in, Pow Pow Power Panel. Love you, TYT. And it was a stolen moment in time meeting you, Cenk, and the filmmakers of Gaza Journalists Under Fire. Thank you for hosting such an incredibly powerful film. I need to draw something about that. So the reason he says I need to draw something about that because he's the one who's drawn the ceasefire shirt and the vote shirt that we have on shoptyt.com. I think their works, I mean, not I think, they are works of art. And you should check that out. And like if you get the pin, by the way, 100% of the proceeds goes to a fund to help Palestinian children recover from this war. And so real quick, I wanted to tell you about that. So if Gaza Journalists Under Fire is Brave New Film's new movie. That's what we saw here in LA yesterday, standing room only crowd. It was amazing. It's only 41 minutes, but it's the most powerful 41 minutes you'll ever see. Like I challenge any supporter of Israel's current actions in Gaza to watch that movie. If after that movie they're still in favor of it, I'll be shocked. I'll like stunned, because that movie is so powerful. I mean, I don't know that there was a single person in the room that wasn't crying at that. And so, and it's not just about the journalist. So what you can do, guys, it's free. You get a screening and then you could invite people to your house and watch it together, okay? And if you haven't watched it, you really, even with all of our coverage, I'm not sure that you know exactly what's going on without seeing it, the devastation with your own eyes. So bravenewfilms.org, bravenewfilms.org, okay? That's where you go, you ask for the free screening, boom, okay? And you can watch it and you can bring friends over. So Robert Greenwald's an American treasure. He's an unbelievable guy. By the way, in the movie, there were Holocaust survivors who were practically begging Israel, please don't, please stop. What are you doing? Stop, right? So it's just really powerful. And Imran, thanks for coming out, brother, appreciate it. Hedgehog Dragon writes in, Nina. There was 3 of them, I'd say. and the Dragon Daddy. Oh, and Cenk is here too, the power's in the house. What am I gonna do with you guys? All right, Kaylee writes in, it sometimes feels like the only hope for us is if Trump voters finally wake up. Oh no, they're not gonna wake up on this one. They might on war, they might on other issues, but when it comes to anything related to immigrants, like independents are different. Independents that voted for Trump are different. MAGA, hardcore MAGA, no way. They take away birthright citizenship in a second. That's my read of it. Zero Fat writes, Nina's smile brightens all this darkness up. And that is fair and true.
Aww.
Okay.
Thank you, darling. Hey, Cenk, you know you were saying that as if all those folks.
on TYT, Cenk, Nina, and John with you. So also LOL joined. So, I mean, if we're all laughing out loud, we're having a great time. I love it. Okay, thank you for hitting the join button below the video. And Schrodinger's Dragon sent in a Young Turks memberships on YouTube. We appreciate you. Nina, you were saying something during the social break.
Yeah, one of the members that were saying they would hope that the MAGA people will wake up on the immigration stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, as if all of their ancestors, all of these people that's raising all this fuss, as if they originated from this land. I mean, it just kills me how they don't understand the history of this land.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, show me your papers from the Mayflower. You're all undocumented, right? It's just us naturalized citizens and Native Americans. Sorry.
Jesus. Well, I don't know, Cenk. Now you know my ancestors, they were forced over here. Okay, so we got to be in that number.
You know what? I'm happy to keep it. I like how naturalized citizens are in charge now, since we're the only ones that are apparently definitely citizens. Okay. So, well, you know, Mamdani's a naturalized citizen. Wait till they get a load of that. Okay, and they have, as you'll see in a story that's coming up. All right, let's go to the next story.
I have nothing to really add to that. The Italians came over and nobody had any problems with it. So, and we didn't cause any problems either. Anyway, okay, well, we were LOLing a moment ago. We're gonna have to stop doing that for a little bit because this is one of the worst stories you're gonna have heard in quite a while. Let's take a look.
The headline is chilling. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. It seems everyone, including ordinary hungry civilians, are deemed to be targets.
The IDF is actually communicate the Gazan population by fire, by fired live ammunition.
As you saw right there, we're learning horrific new details about the IDF's recent conduct in Gaza, thanks to a damning report from Israeli newspaper Haaretz. And as the journalist was saying right there, the IDF was ordered by their leadership to communicate with totally unarmed, peaceful Palestinians by firing at them with live ammunition as a policy going forward. And these details are horrific, the numbers are terrible, but we're gonna run through all of it because not nearly enough people are paying attention to this story anymore, particularly with what's going on with Iran. But the situation there remains as horrific as anywhere in the world, and the numbers are climbing every single day. And so these aid centers that have been the site of near daily massacres are run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's been in the Gaza Strip since May. It's an organization that was set up by Israel working with US evangelicals and private security contractors. It's staffed by American and Palestinian workers and then secured by the IDF from a few hundred meters away. And since they've opened just 1 month ago, there have been 19 different shooting incidents there. And according to the Gaza Health Ministry, 549 people have already been killed in just 1 month near these aid centers, just waiting for food, the small amount of food that is allowed through when enough food exists for every single man, woman, and children there to be perfectly fine, but they don't let it in. And then when it comes in, you are risking your life every single day going to get it. Over 4,000 people have been wounded, and we don't know for sure what these numbers are. That's what it's believed. And those numbers are so insane. I mean, I was recently watching Andor, and they wanted to create a fictional scenario that would drill home how cruel and evil a regime was. And they had a smaller massacre than that. And that was enough for people to understand who the bad guy in that story was. And that number will be higher tomorrow, and it'll be higher the day after that. And if you're a Palestinian in the area, there's nothing you can do but continue to go to the place where you just might be murdered, because otherwise you and your family will likely starve to death. And so this is not just a series of accidents or miscommunications, as Haaretz reported. This is the policy. This is working as it is supposed to. According to officers and soldiers who served there, This is not just the people being murdered saying this. This is those serving in this area. The IDF fires at people who arrive before opening hours to prevent them from approaching, or again after the centers close to disperse them. Since some of the shooting incidents occurred at night ahead of the opening, it's possible that some civilians couldn't see the boundaries of the designated area. Others might have believed that worst case scenario, they would be told to leave, not shot by the military. And so a lot of miscommunications here, sort of understandably. One soldier said, "It's a killing field. Where I was stationed, between 1 and 5 people were killed every day. They're treated like a hostile force. No crowd control measures, no tear gas, just live fire with everything imaginable. Heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, mortars. Then once the center opens, the shooting stops and they know they can approach. Our form of communication is gunfire. We open fire early in the morning if someone tries to get in line from a few hundred meters away, and sometimes we just charge at them from close range. But there's no danger to the forces. I'm not aware of a single instance of return fire. There's no enemy, no weapons." This is not, where they over-exaggerate a threat. Someone threw a rock, so they needed to blow up a building and kill 100 civilians or whatever. They're not even pretending that there's a threat. They just don't want to talk to the people. They don't want to communicate with them, see them as humans. So instead, you shoot them. You kill 1, 2, 4, 7 people a day, and then the others, I guess, will get the message. And so this is not like us reporting on, hey, the Guardian looked into it and 6 months ago there was a bad massacre. It could be happening as we do this show. And by the time the Young Turks goes live on Monday, it will have happened multiple times again. And they are hoping, and we'll get more into the propaganda aspect of this, they are hoping that nobody gives a damn about this story anymore and doesn't care at all about the ever-growing list of people who've been killed just desperately trying to feed their families.
Yeah, so lots of devastating facts here. First of all, when you target civilians on purpose, that has a name. It's called being a terrorist. And so what I'm sick of is the racism in American media where if it's a Muslim that does something, terrorism, instantly. And half the time they don't even check to see if it's military or civilians. By the way, did you know that out of the 1,200 killed in Israel on October 7th, about 400 were military? So it's still a despicable act. They still killed over 800 civilians, but they just lump it all in. Even if you kill Israeli military, you're not allowed to do that, you're a terrorist. But Israel can kill your civilians on purpose, and no, they're not a terrorist state, because that only applies to Muslims. So it's just a racist word. It doesn't mean anything anymore, it's trash. Unless you say, no, yes, from now on, we're calling Israel a terrorist state because they are definitely killing civilians on purpose. And the daddy's unfortunately theme here, the program they have where they wait for somebody that an AI picked to go home that they think might be connected to someone who else is connected to someone who was Hamas at some point. Again, it's AI picking, they have no idea, okay? And they wait for them to go home so that they could kill their entire family and their children along with them. So people who target children and civilians on purpose are terrorists, and that is the IDF. It's indisputable. The only reason why you would argue it is if you're racist and say, yeah, no, only Muslims get called that. Okay, so So I don't want to hear anybody being offended about, anti-Semitism. No, I get to be racist towards you, but you don't get to be accurate in your labels against me. Okay, so none of that crap. Okay, now let's talk about the wanton slaughter that Israel does in this despicable genocide. Okay, so this is straight out of the textbook genocide situation. So I've told you this before. Srebrenica was a genocide, considered a genocide by the UN and by all scholars. About 8,000 Muslims were killed, so a much lower number than here in Israel. And they targeted Muslims just like Israel's targeting Palestinians. And they did the same exact trick. And the soldiers explained later in Srebrenica, the Serb soldiers, we realized that if we starved them, it would be easier to kill them because then when they came to get the food that we brought them, they were sitting ducks, and then we just killed their civilians that were coming out for food. That's exactly what Israel's doing here. If you think that all of this is self-defense, you're a terrible person. It's not self-defense at all. October 7th was 2 years ago. They're still claiming self-defense as they've destroyed or damaged 92% of the buildings. Okay, here's another part of the story that's just a side part where they're like, oh, by the way, they've hired American private contractors to literally destroy every home in Gaza. And they get paid $1,500 per home that they destroy. Wait, it always gets worse. They're given carte blanche. So if they see anyone near a home, including someone who owns the home, they murder them. They have a right to kill any civilian around a home that they want to demolish. And since they're getting $1,500 per home that they're demolishing, they want to hurry. So they were like, okay, go smash that one, smash that one. So wait, are you looking for a mosque? No, they're destroying all the homes. And if anyone's near the homes, they murder them. These are 100% terrorists. Okay, and then US evangelicals are part of this scheme. Think about how twisted you have to get Christianity, that you go near the birthplace of Jesus, not to feed the hungry, but to murder the hungry. No, stop calling yourselves Christians. You're not Christians at all. Tom Massey's right. Real Christians don't want genocide, are not in favor of the slaughter of 17,000 children, or don't agree with the terrorism of Israel. So, and then every step of the way, just when you think it can't get worse, it does. Israel has a version of the game red light, green light that you've seen in Squid Games, a lot of you. They're saying basically that's what they're playing with the people who are trying to get food. And so I saw last night Gaza, Journalists Under Fire by Brave New Films. You should watch that movie, bravenewfilms.org. We'll put the link down below. Make sure you watch that movie. It is so powerful. Israel is clearly murdering journalists on purpose. They're clearly murdering civilians on purpose. And so in this case, what they're reporting, Haaretz is reporting, an Israeli paper, is they're saying, oh, these people are desperate. They're trying to get food for their kids. And that was in the movie. One of the guys who'd been shot trying to get food, he's like, either my kids are gonna starve or I'm gonna risk getting shot while trying to get food. So they have them stop and go, and maybe they're amused at murdering them when it was red lighting, you still went, so I murdered you. This is the current state of Israel. Deeply, deeply terrorist state. And we give money to these terrorists. Those bullets are paid for by American taxpayers. You know that sometimes at these food centers, they throw hand grenades. They throw hand grenades at civilians coming to get food. This is German level now. And I don't care at all if you're offended. If you're more offended by me calling the Israelis terrorists and Germans than you are at the civilians that they're murdering, something wrong with your moral compass. Like if you're like, 17,000 dead kids, who cares? He offended me with a word. He's not allowed to criticize us like that. Okay, then you're a terrible person. You should be spending all of your time trying to end this massacre. Nina.
I mean, Cenk, you said it all. I mean, this is sick by any stretch of it. It's sick. The Biden administration is complicit as hell. They got blood on their hands. President Biden should have done something about this when he was in office, because we knew what was going to happen when President Donald J. Trump got in office. All he's doing is continuing what the Democrats set up. So it's not just President Biden, it is that entire Congress is complicit in this genocide. But by the grace of God, there go I. And as a woman who was raised up in the Christian church, the Black liberation theology, what would Jesus do? He wouldn't do any of this. He would be with the people. So you shoot them outright, then you starve them to death, and then you shoot them when they try to get food. I mean, this is sick as hell, and everybody should be thoroughly disgusted by this. And Cenk and John, something that the United Nations Secretary General just put out about 6 hours ago. He said, diplomacy and human dignity for all must prevail. What is wrong with that? I mean, I'm just trying to understand why people can't understand that. He said, as people in Gaza face injury and death, this is what he stresses. We cannot, quoting him, we cannot allow the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza to be pushed into the shadows. Amen to that. This country is complicit. We got blood on our hands because it is our weapons, our money that's aiding and abetting a freaking genocide. And I know we talk about how many children that are killed because that is devastating, and we're hoping that when people hear the word children are being killed, that they'll have a little more compassion and mercy. But that doesn't seem to work because it's Palestinians. So as far as I'm concerned, Cenk and John, all of the innocent civilians that are being killed, whether they're children, men, women, family, and friends, all of the people in that region are suffering. Either they're being shot straight up, or they're being starved to death. And let's think about the water, not getting enough water, the types of diseases that are bubbling up because of all those buildings that have been destroyed, the environmental damage that will take decades upon decades to remediate. This is a sickness. We are violating American law. We're violating the 620I. That is very clear that when a president of the United States, the Foreign Assistance Act, that is very clear that when the president of the United States of America has been informed that a country that we are giving weapons to is not allowing aid to come into the place for the civilians. That president is supposed to stop this. So damn it, that goes for Biden, who failed, and definitely President Donald J. Trump is failing now. He ran and said he was gonna do this thing differently, not just in Gaza. He said he wasn't gonna be a war president.
Yeah.
It's sick, this is sick. This is sick.
And now he's asking for a Nobel Peace Prize. If only there were a terrible conflict that you could do literally anything to help stop. Yeah.
And doesn't a war require equal size to have equal power? This is a war on Gaza. Because they don't have equal forces. They don't have European nations on their side that'll weapon them up. This is a war on the Palestinians in Gaza. It is not it's not a war, it's a war on.
100%. Well, we're getting on the hour, so I think we do have to take our break. But when we come back, we're gonna get to some of the continued fallout, people losing their minds over Zohran Mamdani's win in New York.
So you guys saw a new design we've got up on shoptyt.com there. That's the Rebel Alliance / Gladiator design for our logo. There it is. I kind of love that. Don't you like that, John?
Yeah, I mean, that's sick. I was actually just saying that during the break. I hadn't noticed that one.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
So shoptyt.com. We also have our best-selling "You're a Vile Individual." That's Anna. What she called someone defending Israel's genocide on Piers Morgan show. You guys asked for it, and there it is. Shoptyt.com. Ring the bell if you can. If you're watching on YouTube, it makes a big difference for us, and it costs you absolutely nothing. So we appreciate it. On the Supreme Court decision on tyt.com, put that away, says, this is a Mitch McConnell win. His decades-long mission to pack all levels of courts with conservatives is paying off for them and will continue for decades to come. That is true. Mitch McConnell was really good at his job. His job was being, Emperor Palpatine for a while. But the Democrats are terrible at their job, which is supposed to be defend us, the Constitution, the country, their own voters, but they never ever do that. So that's why Mitch McConnell won easily against the losers in Democratic leadership. SM said, I just explained the same thing to my colleagues. I mean, are ICE agents gonna be stationed in the delivery room? Wait for it. How else do you know? If you don't have birthright citizenship, how do you know if the baby born in America is an American citizen? You have to investigate their entire lineage. So dumb, it's unbelievably dumb. Progressive at 60 says, my husband is mowing our yard wearing his new vote hat I purchased for him from TYT. He loves it, and I love it on him. That's awesome. And what I loved is that there were people who were wearing Imran Sheikh's shirt, the ceasefire shirt. Part of the proceeds of that also goes to Palestinian children defense I always forget the exact name, but it's fun to help Palestinian children. Sorry, guys. So anyway, Imran was watching the movie while people were wearing his shirt in the room, so that was kind of cool. The sorcerer wrote, I'm the second generation of my family to be born in the USA. My grandparents came through Ellis. With only my birth certificate, I, a white American, cannot prove my citizenship by Trump's rules. If it stays, it's the biggest mess that the country will ever see. But that's why they can't allow it to stay. Anyway, we'll see. Who knows? Maybe they'll make a mess of it. Cerberus Dragon writes in, watching that movie was incredibly moving. It was such an honor meeting Robert Greenwald and seeing TYT family. Truly one of the best films I've seen in my lifetime and must be viewed by as many people as possible. So bravenewfilms.org has the movie. You go there, you get a free screening. You could watch it by yourself. You could invite others to watch it. Bravenewfilms.org. It was incredible, and I think there's some chance that Robert Greenwald is an actual angel. And he said during the Q&A we had afterwards, he's like, as a Jew from New York, I can't let this stand. I was brought up to fight against a genocide like this. And so I love him for it. And there's so many wonderful Jewish folks in the watching the movie as well. And it was super moving. They said, Cenk, keep going. You got to keep trying to stop it. So I love you guys. All right, we'll be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Nina, and John with you guys, and also Ash Sadiq. Ash, thanks for joining. We appreciate it. They hit the join button below. You can do that or tyt.com/join. I'm just going to read one comment from tyt.com member Wang Jun here. You wrote in, you either die an Israeli soldier or you live long enough to see yourself become a German one. Powerful and true. All right, John.
Yow. Okay, well, Cenk got moderately fired up over that. Let's see if we can push him right over the edge with this next story, starting with this.
Yesterday morning, which is of course the morning after Zohran Mamdani's win in New York, you did tweet a photo or an image of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa, and you added the caption or comment, "This hits hard." What did you mean by that?
I'm so thankful every day that AI exists. But right there, you saw Marjorie Taylor Greene being asked live to respond to this incendiary meme that she posted in the aftermath of Zohran Mamdani winning the New York Democratic mayoral race. And we're gonna show you the video of her responding. Cenk, any predictions of how she's gonna handle this?
Very poorly. All right, I'm gonna go off on these politicians in a minute.
Look, I think first of all, you should be nice to her. But anyway, let's see what she had to say.
I'm an American woman and I have all the freedoms in the world to never have to bow to a religion that would force me to cover my body up and only see my eyes and my fingertips. And that is a major threat for all American women. And I think that's something that hits hard for all women.
What were you tweeting it in reference to? When you say it's a threat to American women?
That's a Muslim takeover or possibly Sharia law. That is a great threat to every single American woman. Of course, voters have the right to elect that, and I'll maintain my right to say that I think Sharia law and women being forced to wear burqas is the greatest threat to our freedoms as American women.
Right, but are you opposed to Muslims holding elected office?
I am 100% opposed to Sharia law in America. 100% unapologetically opposed to Sharia law in America.
I'll just be thinking about that the next time she asks me to be nice to her. So he is Muslim, and so she's not gonna say it, but he cannot hold elected office, and she's hardly alone in believing that. And this is just another example of the nonstop 24/7 identity politics from the right. They're not gonna even attempt to argue against Mamdani on the policies. His identity is the argument. He is that way, so that's it. I don't have to explain myself. And in America, we don't have Sharia law. Muslim dictates or whatever do not determine the rights that you have. This is America. evangelical Christianity dictates what rights you have in America, unfortunately. By the way, it was earlier today that the Supreme Court came out with multiple rulings that effectively just enshrined Christian nationalist policies into law. On the topic of parents' rights, you had 3 dissenting justices saying that insurance shouldn't have to pay for HIV medication, an explicit sop to the religious right. But anyway, so she's not going to apologize for it. She's not going to explain it. She probably doesn't even understand the point that she's making. But that's her, and that is just a tweet after all. That's as far as it goes for her. For others, like Representative Andy Ogles, it's not just a tweet. So he put out a tweet, but he wants action. He said, Zohran Little Muhammad Mamdani is an anti-Semitic socialist communist who will destroy the great city of New York. He needs to be deported, which is why I'm calling for him to be subject to denaturalization proceedings. So yesterday it was like the Young Republicans Club saying, we can't hope to beat this guy, so please save us, get him out of this country instantly. And as I tweeted, the debate me bros have become the deport him bros. That's how much faith they have in their rhetoric and policies. But anyway, that's a representative. I don't know, maybe you know, Cenk, what the little Muhammad means. I don't even know what that's a reference to. I think it's just racism, but he's an anti-Semitic socialist and a communist. And for one or multiple of those reasons, the fact that he's a citizen is irrelevant. He should be shipped out of the country. Now, if you're, for instance, like Nick Fuentes or Kanye West and you're wildly anti-Semitic, you get to have dinner with the president. If you are Muslim and we want to make that equate to anti-Semitism, then you don't get to hold an elected office in America. Again, all of this is just based off of your identity and combined with your skin color. But that's 2 representatives losing their minds, triggered beyond rational thought over the fact that this young charismatic man did better than expected in that race. And so I don't know by Monday, what is Holman gonna be doing? What is Stephen Miller gonna be doing? Pam Bondi is a total tool in this fascist regime. Is it impossible that she'll look into finding some sort of excuse? Do you think that they're not pouring through his paperwork? He's been a citizen for years, but is it possible that maybe something was punctuated wrong in one of his pieces of paperwork a decade ago? Maybe he was late on something, that they wouldn't find some excuse to deport this guy based entirely off of his identity.
Yeah, so I've been telling you guys, don't just blanket call all Trump voters fascists or racist, right? So that's about the voters, not the politicians. And as I've clarified 1,000 times, you fight the politicians, you fight the powerful, you fight the donors, you fight the mainstream media, you look up, right? And secondly, when they are actually literally being racist or bigots, yeah, you get to say that. So here's a contrast. Super random, just super chat just came in, not having to do with this, but I'm gonna read it to you because of the point I'm making. Jason Travis said, I'm a populist conservative, so agree with you on a lot of economic issues, Medicaid for all, for example. I can say I would rather vote AOC for president than a corporate Republican, and that's why I'm a TYT member. So that's awesome, and we appreciate you, Jason. So that's why I say, don't make blanket assumptions about the voters. They're a giant range. But when it comes to the politicians, Andy Ogles is a dirtbag, and he's obviously a racist bigot, right? And I don't really care if he gets offended at all, because he obviously doesn't care if he offends Muslims, right? What is little Muhammad? It's not a reference to anything except, he's Muslim, let's all hate him. That's because Andy Ogles is a moron of epic proportions, okay? And what the hell is that Marjorie Taylor Greene burqa thing? And her explanation makes it even worse. Like, a Sharia law is the greatest threat to our freedom. Really? This is what I remember when Oklahoma passed a law saying that there shall be no Sharia law in Oklahoma. Really, why? Was Tulsa in danger of being taken over by the caliphate? Okay, no, this is just to drum up hatred towards Muslims. Nobody's taken over New York with Sharia law. There's giant Muslim countries like Turkey that don't have Sharia law. You think one guy is gonna come into New York and be like, that is it. Even though I didn't say anything about it, and I'm not fundamentalist, and I'm not radical, and I'm not any of these things. I'm gonna turn New York into Sharia law. And by the way, the state legislature is gonna go with it, along with it, and so is the city council. They're not even trying to make sense, okay? So what they're saying is, he's Muslim. So if you don't like that, don't say stupid crap like that, because you sound like a total utter moron. It's not just that, okay, look, I can get mad about the racism and bigotry, etc. As a person who grew up Muslim in America, I'm a little used to it. Like and that's why honestly, I get amused by Israeli supporters who are like, oh, I'm offended. You said that word slightly wrong. Oh my God, I'm so offended, right? Try being Muslim for a second and see how that turns out for you. But put that aside, I just want to focus on how stupid they are. Because they think like all 2 billion Muslims are the same, and that we're all violent terrorists, and that if Mamdani takes over New York as mayor, a lot of them, as we're going to get to here, think that it's going to be 9/11 right away. Like Laura Loomer said it, others have said it. Like he's going to come in and go, okay, that's it. I'm now the mayor. This is the button to blow up New York, right? No, that's it. There is no button to blow up New York, and he's coming to serve New York. But because he's Muslim, they say all these terrible things without any backup to it at all. Because they're terrible human beings. But hold, I'm gonna argue that it gets worse. Okay, because I think what Kirsten Gillibrand is doing is not as clearly racist as this, but I think that it is more subversive, more disgusting, and more likely to be effective. In fact, we're asking the hardest question we've ever asked at TYT.com. Who will do the most damage to Zohran Mamdani? A, MAGA guys who are like, oh yeah, he's Muslim, it's gonna blow up New York. Okay, yeah, that was a little bit at their voters. Hey, listen, if you don't think that in your MAGA, you're innocent. If you do think that, you are a moron. Okay, B, establishment Democrats. That's the Gillibrand part we're gonna get to. C, donors like AIPAC, Bill Ackman. You can see how this is hard because they're all gonna come for him. And D, mainstream media. I don't know how to answer that. I think MAGA, because there's like the MAGA politicians, because they're so stupid and obviously racist, will do the least damage, but the other three are gonna combine for massive damage against Mamdani. So John's gonna tell you about the others in a second, but what do you think so far, Nina?
Yeah, absolutely, Cenk. You made that impossible. I'm saying B all the way. It will definitely be the neo-libs. I'm old enough to remember when India Walton in Buffalo, New York, won the Democratic primary, and the neoliberals found a way to snatch that from her by having the mayor, that the incumbent, he was able to run on another line and capture the general election. And so we know Cuomo's out there now, basically saying, he doesn't know what he's gonna do, but he's gonna keep that line. In terms of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lord Jesus, 2 words: seek help. Really, Sharia law is the biggest threat to women in America, but not the legislation that has been enacted all over this country in various states that takes away a woman's ability to control her own body. That's not the biggest threat, but Sharia law is. How about the fact that most women are not making dollar for dollar as their male counterparts? That's not a big threat, but non-existent Sharia law in America is. Or how about the federal minimum wage not increasing, or the sub-minimum wage that we got to do? Oh no, none of those things. How about the fact that we don't have universal health care? See, those things are real threats to women in America. So if the Congresswoman was really serious about fighting those threats, she would come on and join the folks on the side that want to change material conditions. And in terms of women being able to control what they wear, I can remember even in some of my church experiences being limited growing up on what I could wear. In certain segments of churches, women wearing pants is not acceptable. And since I was a child, being indoctrinated in this way, I didn't have many choices until I became grown. So for her to sit up here and say that only in some Muslim religion, portions of Sharia, Shiite, whatever, the different segments of it is the only thing that oppresses women. The woman is lying. Her teeth, she's lying through her teeth. And I would have more respect for her if she just come on out and say that Mamdani is a Muslim and that is why she's opposed to him, versus playing these games. Tricks are for kids, Congresswoman.
Yeah, one quick thing. Like, if you think that all Muslims are violent fundamentalists, it's like somebody coming in and going, Christians, they're so stupid. They handle the snakes and speak in tongues like morons. No, that's just Pentecostal fundamentalists, okay? To say that all Christians like that would be mental, right? But Muslim terrorists, are even smaller than fundamentalist Pentecostals. Because they're terrorists, there's like only a couple of hundred of them in the whole planet. There's 2 billion Muslims, right? It's a microscopic percentage, right? But no, when it's a Muslim, you can smear all of them. You can smear a quarter of the planet and it's totally fine. Yeah. It's not fine if you do it to Christians, it's not fine, or Jews or Muslims.
Yeah, and so especially
for a party that decries identity politics, they sure play a lot of it, doesn't they?
Exactly, that's a great point, Nina, because this is how, look, I say a lot of times, don't fall into the trap of going along with things that are unpopular in identity politics. But this is the Republicans starting identity politics, and they start all the time. There's another identity politics thing they started. It's called the Southern Strategy. Okay, so you should check that out in my book, Justice is Coming. So Republicans that complain about identity politics, so when your own politicians do it, why don't you tell them to shut their mouth? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, and in particular, when the Democrats know that the Republicans, elected, media, otherwise, are doing all of this, the fact that so many of them would either participate, as we're going to show you, or for the most part, a lot of them just stand back, don't defend him, don't rally around your popular, future star potentially. Instead, just allow them to be attacked, or in some cases, actually participate in it. And so here is Kirsten Gillibrand.
But I do also want to be clear that he said he does not support violent intifada. Is that fair?
So, Brian, I didn't hear your exchange with him, but if I was speaking to him directly, I would simply say that is not how the words are received. And it doesn't matter what meaning you have in your brain, it is not how the word is received. And when you use a word like intifada to many Jewish Americans and Jewish New Yorkers, that means you are permissive for violence against Jews. So I appreciate that he told you he didn't mean that, and that's great. That's a great place to start.
Also clarify, or he was clarifying that he never said globalize the intifada. He was asked in an interview if he would denounce the phrase globalize the intifada. And then that led to this kind of conversation, that you were just referring to, but that he was never out there saying globalize the intifada. He was asked about other people who used it. So just to be precise about what happened there, yes?
Well, as a leader of a city as diverse as New York City with 8 million people, as the largest Jewish population in the country, he should denounce it. And that's it, period.
Pretty naturally, it goes from denouncing him because you think mistakenly that he said it, then you're reminded that he did not in fact say it, and you're still just denouncing him exactly as much. Like it doesn't matter. And again, yeah, you're a leader of that state, and the Democratic electorate of that state also just chose him. He could potentially be a leader too. Maybe speak with him. Maybe, especially when you see the rabid, vile Islamophobia racing towards him. We're not just talking about catchphrases. Elected representatives are calling for him to be denaturalized and deported. Maybe end up in CCOT or something like that. The fact that Gillibrand would so readily jump on board with that is depressing. Now, coming out of the interview, spokesman for Gillibrand said that she had misspoken when initially implying that he had said it. Again, she didn't misspeak, she was wrong. And even when corrected, held basically the same position. But in any event, we've been debating who it is that's gonna do more damage. Cenk, what do you make of that and the willingness to do this character assassination?
So that's just a sophisticated way of saying, hey, little Mohammed, my donors say you shouldn't be in this race. Hey, donors, send me money. I love Israel, and I'm gonna smear any Muslim that comes across here. So Gillibrand's disgusting, okay? So look, I'm gonna go off more on Gillibrand and tell you how dangerous she is and how counterproductive she's been to the entire Democratic Party. But first, he didn't even say a word, but they're doing a character assassination based on him defending someone else saying a word. Gee, I wonder if I predicted that there would be character assassinations from the left and the right. Let's just watch from yesterday's show. What I want you to know and look for going forward from this day to the day of the general election in New York is watch what the mainstream media does. Because they're the actual hatchet men. Remember, the Ackman money goes into buying ads in mainstream media, and then mainstream media coincidentally supports their candidate 100%, and then digs and digs and digs and tries to find something wrong with Mamdani, and then comes out and goes, aha! We have this and this and this. And a Republican congressman today already at it. He found a rap lyric in something Mamdani sang once. And he's like, aha! He's supporting the wrong people in a rap line or whatever. So you're gonna see 200 stories like that. And here we go, we're on the board already. Okay, with several of them. And the way that it works is it's an incestuous cycle. Someone plants a story in the media. Did you know he didn't denounce the phrase globalize the intifada? And then establishment Democrat like Gillibrand picks it up and goes, oh my God, he's saying illegal words. Oh, my donors are super upset. I mean, the voters of New York are super upset. They're super upset that anyone is criticizing our beloved Israel. I mean, this goddamn Muslim. I'm worried about the words he's using. Well, he didn't use them, but words he's defending that he might use, but he doesn't use, etc. I told you, they're gonna pull one hatchet after another. By the way, if they're using words he didn't even use to smear him, like I said, there's gonna be 200 of these, and that also means they don't have much.
Yeah.
If they're having to go to rap lyrics from when he was a kid about some randos, and they're going to words he didn't even say, that means they got bupkis. They have the equivalent of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the burqa and Andy Ogles and Little Muhammad. So, but the reason why I think Gillibrand does more damage is because of two things. One, it's more nefarious. So when the idiot Republican politician goes in and goes, oh, he's Muslim, I don't like Muslims, right? Like you're like, hey, everybody on the planet knows what a moron, easy to dismiss, right? Gillibrand comes in with, he's offending people. He's the one that's actually causing harm. We have to stop him. He's causing harm with his Muslimness. And the fact that he doesn't love Israel and say that we should send all our money to Israel. We have to stop that stupid Muslim. I'm way more sophisticated. My voters are offended. Hey, I'm offended at a lot of words. From the river to the sea, right? Terrible, I denounced that. I said, don't do that, and the chance is counterproductive. It's not gonna help us. And then Benjamin Netanyahu came out and said, in front of the whole world, that Israel is going to do from the river to the sea. He literally said it, and then he literally is doing it. And is that a problem? Gillibrand has never called that out. Never. No, Gillibrand loves it when Israel does the genocide because tons and tons of her donors are AIPAC and other Israeli lobbyists. So the Republicans stab you from the front, the Democrats stab you from the back. And Gillibrand's famous for that. She's the one who stabbed Al Franken in the back and said, oh, I'm so disgusted by his sexual harassment because she thought that she was gonna run for president, she did for about a second, and Franken was gonna run for president at the time, so she wanted to eliminate one of her opponents within the Democratic Party. And now she sees Zohran Mamdani, and he's unacceptably not polishing the boots of Netanyahu, and so she's like, donors, remember how much I tried to put a hatchet in Mamdani's back, because he's a stupid Muslim. You're just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. In fact, you're worse than her. Okay, that's how I feel about it, Nina.
Amen. Amen. She is a coward of epic proportions. And yes, Democrats like her are gonna do more damage than MAGA. And they're gonna combine with the media and with the money class. So they all go together, but she is an absolute coward. So I'm just amening what you said, Cenk. You summed it up. I'm just add, she's a coward.
Yes, I agree. And mainstream media will love it. They'll say tut 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 to Andy Ogles and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then they will repeat the Gillibrand kind of smears 2,000 times. Watch, you'll see it. You'll see it going forward. Mainstream media will take that super legitimately, and they'll talk endlessly about a word he didn't even say, right? And yes, intifada can mean both things, and oftentimes is referred to as a global fight back against the occupation through politics, diplomacy, words, and some people mean it as violence and others do not mean it as violence. Also, there are words like Greater Israel, Eretz Israel, which mean, and Judeo-Samaria, that means that West Bank and Gaza Strip are Jewish land that Israel will swallow whole. They have the maps up in their cabinet, in their Knesset, etc. And they plan to ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians and take that land. And they're actually doing it. But that has never bothered Gillibrand as long as the check's clear. Yeah. She's totally and completely bought by the Israeli lobby. And yes, I said that. And let me see you call out Eretz Israel. Let me see you call out the genocidal, terroristic state of Israel. We just did a story earlier today, Haaretz reporting they're murdering people getting food on purpose, civilians. 17,000 dead kids. But Gillibrand doesn't care. She cares about words. A stadium full of murdered children? AIPAC, did the check clear? The stupid Muslims, who cares about them, right? Oh, a word offended one of my donors. A word he didn't even say. So that's kind of scum Kirsten Gillibrand is, who likes to destroy people, and then all of mainstream media will help her try to destroy Mamdani, and credit to Brian Lehrer for actually sticking up for the truth there. Thank you, brother, for doing your job and saying what was true instead of going along with this horrifically racist senator from New York, okay? No, Jewish Americans are not the only people who get to say that they are offended. I'm offended. Does that count? No, if Muslims are offended because you attack all Muslims who don't bow their heads to a foreign government, but our offense doesn't matter, right, Gillibrand? Because we didn't donate to you. That's how these crooks are, both in the Republican and Democratic Party, young Turks. Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this. You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny. Bye. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Animals are innocent. Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Such a big fan.
Thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
I can't stand these young people. Get them out of here.
Young Turks, second hour power panel. Cenk Huger, Wozni Lambre, Sharon Reed. Sharon's on Rebel HQ. Wozny's a senior writer at The Ringer. Make sure you check him out there, and his podcast is Woz Speaks. And Fat Satter, thank you, brother, for gifting 5 memberships on YouTube. And Dave Gustavo, thank you for hitting the join button. We appreciate it. All right, I'm interviewing 2 right-wing podcasters at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock Eastern. That's going to be freely available to everyone. It could be interesting. So a lot to get through. So Sharon, let's do it.
Oh, it's going to be interesting. Can't wait for that. But in the meantime, Cenk and Woz, we begin with this one, free press.
One thing America can make, it's a bomb. Ask the Japanese. Ask the Germans. I've never heard of an American bomb not working. Have you? Everybody says direct hit, years to come back from it. And then there's CNN alone in the corner in last place, spewing enemy propaganda. I don't think they can come back from this.
Entertainment host Fox News' Jesse Waters, furious over CNN's recent reporting that stated the strikes on Iran only set back its nuclear program by a couple of months. Clearly, Trump is God. What he says goes. And the United States is the most technologically advanced country that gets everything right, never manages a mistake. Cenk, we're going to throw to you in a second, but first, let's get more details. What Jesse Waters had to say about the strike, because the level of delulu, I'll say, is insane for this one.
Oh, Jesse, it almost seems like CNN and the New York Times are using this leaked report, whatever it is, to cheer triumphantly that perhaps the bunker buster bomber strike wasn't quite as effective as the administration is claiming. What do you make of that? And will the president get credit if he did, in fact, dismantle Iran's nuclear program?
Of course. If there's one thing America can make, it's a bomb. If this didn't work and it was a dud, Netanyahu would have been on the phone with Trump saying, let's do another run. If it didn't work, the Iranians wouldn't have had a ceasefire. This was such a precise strike. They put these bombs down the mountain's ventilation shaft. Okay, this didn't have to explode and bore into the mountain. They put these things untouched and it slid down the ventilation shaft and exploded in the main hall. And then collapsed the roof of the cavern and caused a fire. You could even see the discoloration at the top of the mountain. This wasn't like carpet bombing the North Vietnamese jungles. This was as precise a strike as you can get.
Cenk, I guess I don't understand why this was so important to the administration and the man who leads it, President Trump. I mean, if they set him back a couple of months, wouldn't that be a success? Then get a ceasefire? I just don't understand why Jesse Waters has to carry the water for the president in this way. A strike is a strike, and things didn't go well. Do we have to debate the level to which they didn't go well?
Well, so there's a hilarious lie in there that we're going to show you in a little bit from Jesse Waters. He actually contradicts himself. I love it. But first, to Sharon's point, one of the things I want to discuss here is, look, I think that was cherry-picked intelligence, and I'm glad that they're not listening to it. So I agree with the result of what Donald Trump and Jesse Waters want, which is let's not bomb Iran anymore. The bombing worked well enough. Let's get out of there, okay? But why do you have to attack CNN and New York Times and threaten to sue them or get the reporters fired? That's not necessary at all. You just say it's cherry-picked intelligence, it's wrong, and you move on. But nope, they always have to take it over the top. They always have to try to get everybody fired and canceled, and no one's allowed to criticize the president. No one's allowed to dispute the president. Do we live in a democracy or don't we? Do you believe in freedom of speech or not? New York Times and CNN say it. So what? Say something back, right? Instead of demanding that no one be allowed to say it. They're hilariously hypocritical on free speech. But let me let you finish the rest of the story, and then I want to come back to the lie too.
Yeah, hypocritical, somewhat. Well, dictatorship is what comes to mind. Evidence of that. So let's get into it. CNN, the New York Times. According to the Times, the report by the Defense Intelligence Agency focused largely on the state of the Fordo plant, country's deeply buried enrichment facility, which produced the near bomb-grade fuel. Multiple officials familiar with the intelligence report that spoke to both the Times and CNN said early findings showed this. The strikes had set back Iran's nuclear program by months. Officials said the strikes sealed off entrances to the facility, but had not led to a collapse, leaving open the possibility that Iran could eventually dig it out. New York Times. CNN's report also stated this. The analysis of the damage to the sites and the impact of the strikes on Iran's nuclear ambitions is ongoing. Could change as more intelligence becomes available, but the early findings are at odds with President Donald Trump's repeated claims that the strikes completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. But Jesse Waters arguing that this reporting is just enemy propaganda trying to discredit Trump.
The woman is the same reporter who said the laptop was Russian, and now she says our bombs don't work. You'd think she would have been fired for getting hoodwinked by the deep state a couple years ago, but she actually got promoted. She got promoted for being wrong. She got a raise for being wrong. Now she's on CNN getting hoodwinked all over again, because that's the point. She's not there to be right. She's just there to hurt Donald Trump.
All right, so as we reported yesterday, Donald Trump went on a Trump social bender, if you will, stating fake news, CNN is so disgusting and incompetent. And of course, what does Trump do when hit with critical reporting about him? Well, Cenk talked about it. He threatens to sue. This, according to the New York Times, in a letter to the Times, a personal lawyer for the president said the newspaper's article had damaged Mr. Trump's reputation and demanded that the news organization retract and apologize for the piece, which the letter described as false, defamatory, and unpatriotic. So I don't, maybe you can sue for that. CNN also confirmed they received a similar threat. The letter from Trump's lawyer, Alejandro Brito, described the attack on Iran as a, quote, historic and resounding military success that unequivocally eliminated Iran's nuclear capabilities and brought peace to the region, echoing the president's own characterizations of the operation. Mr. Brito asserted that the Times article about the preliminary intelligence assessment, quote, undermined the credibility and integrity of President Trump in the eyes of the public and the professional community. But again, the Times noted the preliminary nature of the report. So they're covered there. The Times, in a response on Thursday, rejected Trump's demands, noting that Trump administration officials had subsequently confirmed the existence of the report issued by the Defense Intelligence Agency and its findings. No retraction is needed. No apology will be forthcoming. We told the truth to the best of our ability. We will continue to do so. The Times lawyer pushing back. And look, let's hope that they continue to push back, Cenk and Waz. But I don't know. It seems that the more of this frivolous nonsense, this babbling from the administration, legal fictitious renderings go out, more and more news organizations could cave. Not necessarily the newspapers, Cenk, but we've seen it with multiple networks caving and giving ridiculous settlements. What do you think happens here?
Yeah, unfortunately, as predicted, now other politicians are doing it, like Gavin Newsom. I want to get back to that too, but I want to let Waz weigh in first. What do you think, Waz?
I think the Trump regime only knows one gear, and that's the maximalist response to any and all opposition. However, as wrongheaded as I think this like litigious aspect of their response is, I think they're responding to something real, which is that these deep state people, these warmongering neocon people, they're leaking these reports because they want to go back in. It's just the truth. Like, when are they ever leaking reports like, oh, the military didn't really do a good enough job? That's not a thing. That's not something you're gonna get 3 days after something happened. They're doing it because it's like, no, we need to escalate even further. And I think the Trump administration, to their credit, rightfully understand that an escalation would inevitably lead to all-out war. Iran's response by hitting our bases, telling us ahead of time to do as little impact as possible, even though we're told constantly that the Iranians are part of a death cult who want to just kill everybody. And so it was able to give Trump and them a win to be like, all right, we did it, we're wiping our hands, we're done. They're leaking this in the New York Times and say, no, we need to go do more, which is then going to mean what? The Iranians didn't have to react in kind. And then when they do actually strike us for real, hit our military personnel, not the freaking Israelis, our military personnel in the region, then we have to escalate even further. And that escalation leads to this, and then inevitably means boots on the ground in freaking Iran. That's why they're doing this in the New York Times and in CNN. And yes, Trump's response is ridiculous because he doesn't know any other gears. He doesn't know how to modulate. But I think their instinct here is the right one. The reason why they're criticizing a military action. Think about that. When do the Times or CNN criticize military actions abroad? Never. They're only doing it because they want to do more. And so, like, as nasty and stupid as the responses from the Trump people, I think they have a point here.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Waz, but they could have just said it like Waz. And like we said yesterday on the show with, look, there's evidence, you could create evidence on both sides, and in fact, our intelligence should create evidence on both sides. Hey, here's a report saying that we think we might have done enough damage. Here's a report saying we think we might not have done enough damage. We're not sure, and that's why we have these two different reports. But you don't see both reports. One of them gets picked up by someone who wants to create more war, leaked to the New York Times and CNN. And New York Times and CNN don't give you any context into, oh, this is a warmonger giving me this leak to create more war. They just say it like, oh, that's it, it's definitive, right? And to be fair to the New York Times, they didn't say that it was definitive, but it leaves that impression. And they're great at leaving that impression about how we need to go to more war. Just look at what they did during the Iraq war. Having said that, there's no reason to say that the New York Times is unpatriotic. Reporters don't have to be patriotic. They just have to be accurate, right? There's no need to say that our own intelligence, even if it's cherry-picked, is enemy propaganda or reports about it. So yeah, the fact that they can't modulate discredits them, and it's problematic, especially in a situation like this where they're generally speaking largely right about not escalating the war and not using cherry-picked intelligence to escalate it. Last thing, two things I want to get to is the stuff I promised you guys. So now Gavin Newsom is suing Fox News for some edit they did, and Jesse Waters said something about a call between him and Trump. Honestly, the rest of the story is totally uninteresting. He's doing it for media attention, but he's also doing it a little bit like Trump to intimidate the press. You better not write anything or say anything negative about me. So this is another giant problem with how Trump goes about this. Because when you start having politicians threatening to sue anyone who criticizes them, as we told you when Trump first started doing it, now all politicians will say, oh, that's it, you can't criticize me at all, I'm suing everyone. And that's a giant problem. And finally, we get to the funny part. So Donald Trump was very clear. He said the intelligence was very inconclusive. The intelligence says we don't know, which is what I told you a minute ago. Now, Jesse Waters partly agrees, but then partly tells us he knows exactly what happened. Let's watch.
Do you think they're getting it from some sort of nefarious Iranian sources and it's wishful thinking?
Some hater in the Pentagon leaked an early report that had no confidence and just relied on some camera up in the sky. That's it. It's not like there's some Israeli spy down there in the rubble with a phone. Yep, we killed this thing. Can you guys send some food? You're never gonna know what happened because the thing is a pile of rubble. This was such a precise strike. They put these bombs down the mountain's ventilation shaft. They put these things untouched and it slid down the ventilation shaft and exploded in the main hall. And then collapsed the roof of the cavern and caused a fire. You could even see the discoloration at the top of the mountain. They compared the target to something the size of a refrigerator. This was as precise a strike as you can get.
Isn't that amazing? That was in the same segment. He said, there's no way of knowing what happened with the bomb. Let me tell you exactly what happened with the bomb. It slid down the tunnel shaft, then it got there, past Mohammed, and then saw a sandwich that was left by. Turns out it was a falafel sandwich. But there's no way of knowing what happened. But then, come on, Jesse, come on. I mean, if you're gonna lie, at least give it a little bit of space between the two lies. So this terrible story with an amusing ending. Okay.
Yeah, if he's that good though, he's got to get off the air at Fox News immediately and join the CIA. They need him in the intelligence community. If he knows it went down that ventilation chute and all of that stuff, it's incredible. Okay, he's either a genius or a fascinating storyteller. Okay, either way, he's the best. He's the best.
And by the way, they dropped it from 13,000 feet, but it didn't explode. It slid down the tunnel shaft and then exploded later. Likely story. Yeah.
Incredible. He's an award.
Jesus, man.
An award season yet.
All right, we got to take a break.
Yeah.
Okay, when we come back, lots of amazing stories, so come right back.
The nuclear material might not have been there. The nuclear material might not have been there.
All right, let's go to Super Chat. Titan writes in, Cenk, when you go on other shows, don't use the word Islamophobia. Start calling this straight up racist. Shout it at every chance because this racism against Arabs needs to be challenged. Islamophobia just doesn't convey it. Mission accomplished. I almost never use the word Islamophobia. And so it's not because I don't fight back against racism or bigotry against Muslims. It's because it doesn't work. I've never seen the word Islamophobia have someone go, oh, right, you're right, I'm afraid of Muslims. I'm now going to change my mind. I don't know why, but it's a word that doesn't really convince anyone. And you could say how it doesn't matter, they are Islamophobic and I'm gonna call them that. No problem. I'm just telling you what in my experience is more effective and less effective at actually protecting my community, okay? And even bigotry doesn't land as well as racism, to be honest. I totally agree with Titan. And that's why a lot of times I'll say it's racist and they'll go, well, technically Muslim, it is, no, you can't be racist against a religion. Okay, yeah, you go make that argument. All right, 00083 says, Cenk, the Democrats are duplicitous cowards that always stab you in the back while they say there was nothing we could do, all the while secretly agreeing with Republicans. That was a reference to the Kirsten Gillibrand story. And then I think I read your comment before I went off on her, and it was stuck in my head, and I said something similar. Because of you, I hope you're happy. Okay, no, but seriously, thank you for writing in. Obviously, I agree with you. Deb Long wrote in, so never again doesn't apply to Palestinians. Got it. Absolutely disgusting. I overthink about the little girl carrying her sister on her back and wonder what happened to her. It's heartbreaking. Look, guys, I want you to go to bravenewfilms.org and watch the movie Gaza, Journalists Under Fire. But I'm gonna do a little bit of damage to that cause by telling you that every time they showed a video of a little girl on the screen with her parents, I was like, no, please, please don't let her be one of the ones who were killed, please. It's such a heartbreaking, all you gotta do is see 1 or 2 kids who died out of the 17,000. And it'll enrage you. You can't believe that we're the thing that struck me is they had the same phrase out of the Holocaust that they did for that the Palestinians were saying in Gaza, which is, where's the world? Why won't the world come to save us? Why won't the world do anything? Where's the whole world? Don't they see what's happening to us? But Kirsten Gillibrand's worried about offending AIPAC with words, okay. Land of the free, home of my answer. I said Marjorie Taylor Greene is the walking embodiment of loud ignorance, Islamophobia, conspiracy garbage, hate wrapped in Bible quotes. She's not a patriot, she's a national embarrassment. Marjorie Taylor Greene warns of Sharia law taking over every time a Muslim wins an election, but has no issue pushing her own religious beliefs into law. Funny how theocracy only bothers her when it's not Christian. Well, that's indisputable, that last part for sure. Brett Wells writes in on the member section on YouTube, Cenk, you better walk around with your papers. I have an MD surgeon friend originally from India, a US citizen for over 40 years, trained at McGill University 45 years ago, who always carries her papers in Florida. Things are getting sick. Liz Smith says, Cenk is the rant goat. Well, thank you, Liz, appreciate it. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Waz, and Sharon with you guys. Sharon's got the next story.
Kamala Harris, are donors cooling on her?
The first debate of the 2024 presidential campaign is now history. The fallout from it is just getting started. Joining us now is Vice President Kamala Harris.
I'm talking about 3.5 years of performance in work that has been historic.
But is that the man who we saw on the stage tonight? Is that the person you see in meetings every day?
I'm not going to spend all night with you talking about the last 90 minutes when I've been watching the last 3.5 years of performance.
She tried, didn't she? Former Vice President Kamala Harris is yet to announce her next move politically, but according to a report from Politico, some California Democratic donors, they are not thrilled about the idea of her running for governor. Still upset with how she ran defense for former President Joe Biden, like in that interview we just showed you with Anderson Cooper. Let's tell you more about the donors and just a little bit more about what they're saying. But Cenk, what did you think about this scoop in particular, the details?
Yeah, Kamala, I got basically 2 words for you. Don't run. I think she's walking into a trap. And there's a top reason why I think she'll be a terrible candidate, among many, but there's one that you really got to know. We'll get to that in a little bit, but let's find out the rest of the story.
All right, according to one anonymous donor who gave 6 figures to Harris's 2024 campaign, here's the statement anonymously. Kamala just reminds you, we are in this complete S-storm. Biden, we got bamboozled. I think she did the best she could in that situation, but obviously she knew about the cognitive decline too. I've written so many checks because I knew the Trump administration would be horrible. But we're living in a nightmare because of the Democrats. I'm furious at them, truly. Southern California fundraiser had similar thoughts. Here they are. Donors realize it's just going to bring up the whole pathetic last presidential, which no one wants to hear about again. And then it's the whole, did you know Joe Biden thing? She stood still. She still would probably lead, apologies, but honestly, no one is incredibly pumped. According to Scott Drexel, Bay Area-based donor advisor, here's this to consider. Many Democratic givers don't blame Harris for the November outcome, but neither are they inclined to see Harris waltz into the race and expect the party to automatically fall behind her. And others told Political that the longer Harris waits, the less momentum she has. Drexel stated this: it's very fair to say there's not an overwhelming clamor for her candidacy. Very hard for there to be one if it's not 100% clear if she really wants to do it. Mather Martin, San Francisco-based fundraiser who worked on previous Harris campaigns, told Politico, there was more enthusiasm at first. I think it waned a bit. But Martin also stated that he believes Harris could still run a strong campaign for governor of California. According to Politico, Harris plans to make a decision on her future plans in late summer. These are the three options she's weighing. Aforementioned run for California governor in 2026, run for president in 2028, or stay a private citizen, make money, stay out of politics. Cenk, you weigh in on this. Well, you already told us that you would advise her, do not run. Should it be disqualifying? I personally think it should be, okay? If you sat by and you watched all this, I also think it should be disqualifying for the media. And frankly, folks like Jake Tapper, who are paid to tell us the truth, but are now getting paid for some book that'll probably be turned into a movie after we needed to know what we needed to know. But you guys weigh in on what you think of the reporting here and what it might mean.
Yeah, so there's a ton of reasons not to run. So what if she loses and she gets Andrew Cuomo'd, right? And then leaves her career basically in embarrassing fashion. She's gonna have to answer the Biden question. There's many, many more, but there's one that I wanna focus on. She's not sure if she wants to run and people aren't overly excited about her. Why? What's the core reason?
Yeah.
The core reason is because she's not actually trying to fix something. She's not running to get something done. So for example, like if I was gonna run, and the time that I did run, I told you guys, we gotta get money out of politics, and nobody's willing to do it. In order to do it, you have to actually call out both Republicans and Democrats by name. And you have to show how much money they're getting from all these donors. Otherwise, people are never going to see it. You see how animated I am by it. Do you see Kamala Harris being animated by anything? She's trying to decide what's good for her career. And no one even realizes that's the problem. Nobody cares about your career. Maybe reporters do and other Democrats do, but the voters care about what you're gonna do for them. And she hasn't even thought about that yet. It doesn't animate her. That's why she's like, should I run or should I not run? My God, if I was the former vice president and I had a chance to run California, I would do it. Why would I do it? Because I'd be like, we haven't fixed homelessness at all. And we spent $24 billion, where'd the money go? I wanna fix it, and I wanna make California beautiful, and I wanna do all these things. But she's like, should I run for president? Should I run for governor? Should I go run something else? Me. All these corporate Democrats are just empty shells. That's the number one problem. Waz, what do you think?
Man, so beautifully said, Cenk. She's one of the emptiest suits in politics. There's no there. There's nothing there. And a couple of things about that Political piece stuck out to me. One, what Cenk already mentioned, at no point do they say, well, this is the purpose of the candidacy. This will be the purpose of her campaign. This will be the purpose of her, her time in office in the governor's mansion. Never comes up. She has no reason for being. And two, I love how the owners of the party, the big money donors, the consultant class, let themselves off the hook. We were bamboozled. You guys are idiots. It's either you're idiots or you're lying to us. There are no two answers. If Joe Schmo walking down the street, who has no connections, is not an insider, never been to DC, never shook any of these people's hands, could take one look at Joe Biden and know he was cooked. And you, with all your connections, could somehow be fooled into thinking the Biden thing was gonna work. I love the convenient letting, they tricked us. oh, we just had no idea. We run the entire party. We call all the shots. We're the big money big wigs. But we couldn't do anything, Sharon. Yeah. I don't, it was just out of our hands with the Biden thing. It's pathetic.
I think you're both so right. And I would even go further. You both have me convinced that even this article being written, this so-called scoop, is part of the problem. Going to these anonymous billionaires, these rich people who are truly running things, is actually part of the problem, okay? But I agree with you. There is no passion. It's not a mistake. They didn't even think about asking about, well, what would you do? What would she do? What is she itching to do? We like people, I think, in America today still, who make us feel something. Maybe you creep me out. Maybe you make me feel, this passion and love for you, but I gotta feel something. And I don't feel anything here. The circumstances make me a little angry, sure, a lot angry, but the person, you're right, I could care less what she does. What's the platform? What are you running on? What are you gonna do? And I wish that, they came and put their name on this. I thought rich guys, well, some like to run things secretly, I guess.
Yeah. So last two quick things here. One is our poll, because I'm curious about it. We always do a poll on the live chat. Shows live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. So what should Kamala's next move be? Run for governor, run for president, or live a private life? I'm curious what you guys said about that. We'll pull that up in a second. And then the last point I wanted to make is the donors are also guilty of one other thing. They're the ones who wanted the empty suits in the first place. The reason they wanted the empty suits and they didn't care whether Biden had dementia or didn't have dementia is because they tell the politicians what to do. So they don't want the politicians to be too independent.
Exactly.
And have a lot of their own ideas. They say, no, I want you to do my ideas, not your ideas. If you're an empty vessel, that's awesome for the donors. So now them complaining about empty vessels is hilarious and ironic. Okay, we got the poll. No. Okay, well, you know what, guys? That's why you gotta watch the show live, and then you can see it in the live chat, all right? Okay, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got at least one other great story for you guys. Stay right here. All right, TYT.com. First, Gemma Lee writes in, Kamala's complicity in hiding Biden's decline made her into a big Trump collaborator. That's a great point. I mean, that's what I ran as a protest candidate. Why? I was like, I actually want to beat Trump. And this guy's not gonna beat him, it's super obvious. But they're like, no. All about Biden's ego, then all about Kamala's ego. Meanwhile, they forgot to beat Trump. So you should be super mad on that alone. Lou B writes in, Jesse Waters got his munitions training from a Warner Brothers cartoon. I think that's literally what he had in his head. So it's both funny and true. Dragon from the Boogie Down says, Waz gave a great breakdown of Mamdani's victory on his podcast. So good reason.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Thanks for checking that out. I was fired up, as you could imagine, Cenk.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know the last time I was that fired up about a political event. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody check that out. All right, Rubik's Realtor Dragon says, Cenk, you're my effing idol. When you just say facts, you never have to hide. It's so damn liberating. Love you guys. Make everyone great again. Like that, make everyone great again. Okay, and thank you, brother. You guys are always, and I need you and I appreciate you. Thank you for having my back. Purple Rain Dragon says, Greene said that Greene said that with a straight face as a woman in the South are dying of pregnancy, right? She's saying about Sharia law being the biggest threat. Embedded Dude says propaganda is a powerful weapon, can justify the most despicable acts in humanity. It's a sad commentary on the malleability of the human psyche. I couldn't agree more with that. That's a comment. I agree more with that comment than you could imagine. It's exactly right. That's why propaganda is one of the most dangerous things there is, because it melds the human psyche into supporting horrible things. Curious G.J. Lowe says, evangelicals are the absolute worst. I have a friend who's an evangelical, a sister, a brother-in-law, and they all love the genocide. That's really sad. That's his opinion, his experience. But I know some evangelicals are rooting for everyone there to die, so Jesus will come back and murder the rest of us because he's the Prince of Peace. Textan says a US contractor already came back and said they were murdering refugees a couple of weeks ago. Think about how bad it has to be for a mercenary to be appalled. Yes, that's an excellent point. AJ Nestor writes in on Twitch, Israel's doing unto others exactly what was done unto them. We're all the same, kids, for better and for worse. There's just too much worse right now. AJ, I totally agree with that. Rad Rocket said, I wish I had a job that let me pop off the way Cenk does. I bet it feels amazing. Not exactly, but thank you for saying that, I guess. And I'm out of time. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk was and sharing with you guys, and also Ali Saeed and Stash Anderson. Ali and Stash, thanks for hitting the join button below. We really appreciate you guys. Can't do the show without you. You could also do it at tyt.com/join, by the way. All right, Sharon, what's next?
Before, let me just say this. I agree with that last commenter who said that, hey, he wishes he had your job, because it's like, you know how people pay to go in those rage rooms and break things? You can get it out right here, and it's a good thing with facts and everything to support it. So I bet you've got the heart of a 20-year-old now because you've been doing this for so long. This is gonna get your blood pressure up. Cruel and unusual is perhaps an understatement. ICE agents just arrested a 6-year-old cancer patient at an immigration courthouse. A child with leukemia taken from a courtroom hallway in front of his mother and 9-year-old sister, shipped off to a detention center in Texas. Cenk, I'm gonna throw to you in a second, but we do need to break down the facts here because it's incredible, it's significant. The cruelty does seem to be deliberate. The mother, according to the LA Times, and her 2 kids fled Honduras after what the lawsuit describes as imminent, menacing death threats. 6-year-old son had already endured 2 years of chemo treatments for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. They did exactly what asylum seekers are told to do. They waited in Mexico. They applied legally through the app, the P1 app. They were granted parole into the United States. So there you have it. Did everything right. They had a court hearing in LA. That was on May 29th. After the judge dismissed their case, plainclothes ICE agents were waiting in the hallway. They grabbed all 3 in front of everyone. 6-year-old boy, terrified, he urinated on himself, remained in those wet clothes for hours. Nobody gave him a change of clothes. The mother and the children were crying in fear. And then they were flown to San Antonio, transported to a detention center in Dilley, Texas, where they remain imprisoned. Cruel is a word we're using a lot lately for good reasons, but it just seems like the depths of it. It's like, how low can you go? I still think there's more room to go with what's going on here, Jay.
Yeah, so here's what American people are not interested in: cruelty. I don't know when Stephen Miller and Donald Trump and Steve Bannon are gonna get it through their dumbass heads, right? So they think that everyone is just as cool as they are, so they do the projection. But no, what American people wanted was justice. And so were they frustrated? Yes. Did they feel like, hey, we're having to pay for everything, whether it's the undocumented immigrants or the foreign aid and all of this stuff, and we never get anything. We're always giving out, but we never get anything. Well, I follow all the rules, and now all of a sudden, with the crime was on the rise, and everybody's crossing the border, and it felt like no one else has to play by the rules, and they were pissed, and that's why they elected Trump. But they didn't elect him to like chase after 6-year-old leukemia patients. But the dumbass doesn't know that, so he just keeps doing this to make like 20% of the country, his base, the radical right, happy. And they are. They love this. They're like, this is what we voted for. Okay, congratulations. But 80% of the rest of us don't agree. And I know in their bubble, they think everyone is just as cruel as they are. Sorry, guys, we're not. We're not the radical right. And so Rogan agrees, we agree. It doesn't matter. You could do a poll on it, you'll see. If you think the American people really want you to chase down people who've been living here 10, 20 years, find their 6-year-olds, treat them like crap, find out they have leukemia, and don't let them go back to get treatment, you're nuts. The American people are not that cruel.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious what the game plan is in terms of Stephen Miller, where he literally had a meeting. This is reported. He had a meeting with ICE officials and said, why are you guys going after criminals? Go to Home Depot. So literally, the game is over. This idea that there are these hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of horrible criminal immigrants out there that we're just dying to get rid of, as the Trump administration, we've already dispensed with that pretext. Like, it's over for that. And and it's cliche to say it, but the cruelty is the point in terms of it's part of the actual like game plan. Like, they know net deportations right now, I think they're at 200,000. That's in 6 months. They were on pace of 400,000 for the year. Like, that would be less than 2 million if you extrapolate that over 4 years. That's not what they sold to the people who wanted to see a reduction in the migrant population. And so their thinking is that they gotta do stuff so outlandish, so ghoulish, that folks will quote unquote self-deport. And that's literally the point of all of this. They want people thinking like, oh my God, they'll even kick out a cancer patient. So I might as well just go back to where I came from. And so, we can't be surprised, but people are standing up and people are making their voices heard. But yeah, in the meantime, there's just going to be more just ghoulish, behavior from this administration.
Let me give you the government's defense real quick. Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, claimed the boy's case had already been thrown out by an immigration judge and that the family is, quote, not being denied emergency care, but they were denied the ability to keep a scheduled cancer checkup. That was on June 5th. Mother's attorney says ICE did nothing to monitor her son's condition for days after the arrest. 6-year-old child has leukemia, not a national security threat. Sick little boy, just started learning English, going to public school in LA. Family was living with relatives in the area. They were doing things the right way. Kate Gibson Kumar, who is a staff attorney for the Texas Civil Rights Project's Beyond Borders program, represents the family. She argues their detention violated constitutional protections, specifically the 4th and 5th Amendments, guaranteeing due process, preventing unlawful seizures. Her statement to the LA Times, they followed the process, went where they were supposed to go, did everything that was asked of them, and they're being punished for it. So, final thoughts here. This is not, I saw today that the Bush Institute put out a statement on immigration and how half of the people detained, and you talked about the numbers, Woes, but half of the people detained, at least, no criminal record, nothing. Like you said, Cenk, it's not what anyone signed up for. No one signed up for this.
Yeah. So look, they had a legal right to be here, and they say, oh yeah, I know, but we got to beat Obama's record, which I'll tell you about in a second, okay? And then but you have to realize there's a second disastrous part of this. They showed up for an asylum hearing like they were supposed to. They're following the law and the rules. They're like, okay, we were told to come back to court, and They came back to court. Perfect, that's what we want. But they've now been snatching people up from court like that all the time. This is one of many stories we've reported like this. So what is that going to lead to? Nobody's gonna show up to court anymore. So if they got paroled inside the country, you'd be nuts to show up to an asylum hearing or to any kind of immigration proceeding, because they're not gonna have that proceeding. They're just gonna detain you and then send you back. So it's gonna be counterproductive. And all of this because Obama once had around 430,000 people in 1 year that he sent back. And they can't seem to beat that record. So Stephen Miller's in this sweaty mess, like, I have to beat Obama. So how did Obama do it? Back then there wasn't sanctuary cities, there was a program called Secure Cities. They could lobby to bring that back and they could say, hey, that happened under Obama. That would be a rational way to do it. No, God forbid. And then he would process them at the border. But that involves processing them. And they're like, oh, what a pain in the ass to process them and then to remove them. No, just follow the law. Obama followed the law and deported more than you guys did. That's why they called him the reporter in chief. But the second problem they have, they can't solve. Back then there was a lot more people coming. Now there's less people coming. So since there's less people coming, even if they did exactly what Obama did, they couldn't get to his number. So that's why they're having to go pick up cancer patients and kids and start kidnapping people from the middle of the country that have been here for a long, long time. We said send the criminals back. That's what the American people said. When you do this, you lose your popularity. The only good news I see out of this is it'll make their immigration policy so unpopular that it'll cost them in the long run. All right, we got to run. I've got two guests for you guys coming up. Dan Holloway and Jesse Merl, I talked to them before the election. We're gonna check in to see what they think so far of how Trump is going. My guess is they're gonna think that he's going really well, but we'll find out. So stay here, you'll all get to see it. And I wanna thank Sharon, and you can check her out on Rebel Headquarters. And Waz is not only at The Ringer, which you should definitely read, but check out that Waz Speaks podcast where he did that great podcast on Mamdani. Love you guys, have a good weekend, okay?
Yeah.
Back on the Young Turks. So before the election, I debated a couple of right-wing podcasters. One of them is Dan Holloway, host of the Drinking Bros podcast and the Citizen podcast. I wanted to do a check-in and probably get frustrated. So let's do it. Dan, how you doing?
I'm living the dream. How about you?
Well, kinda. So, all right, let's start with this, Dan. So far, you happy with Trump?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, look, there's always some gripes and complaints, and I think no matter what's going on, it's incumbent upon people to be harder on their own side than the other side, whatever you consider yourself to be, because that's how we fine tune things, right? I mean, that should be the incubator at the lowest possible level with the people you agree with the most, and then move that more broadly out. And you and people like me and you can have debates after that. But I would say mostly, we talked about this back in November, but the election for me was about three things. One is securing the homeland, specifically the border, which I think they're doing a good job there. Second is getting debt, which is to mean spending under control. That's not happened. And then advancing the country, and to me that means like American soft power, and then innovating as well, and trying to stay out of direct ground combat wars. Okay at that. That's been a mixed bag as well, but more or less, yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right, that seems like an honest analysis. That's exactly what we expect from you. So before we get to war in America first, which is what I'm most interested in for the purposes of this conversation, give me one or two things that you're unhappy with on the Trump administration.
Yeah, what well, see, the thing that I'm most unhappy about is the inability to codify spending cuts. And to me, that's mostly not a Trump problem. That's a Congress problem. I mean, we know these people aren't going to do this stuff. I've seen very little movement on that. And for Trump's part, the big beautiful bill, don't support that at all. I think omnibus bills were the devil 12 months ago, and from my perspective, they're still not good. So you're not going to convince me that they're great now, no matter what. No matter what's in them, and no matter what clever name Trump comes up with for it, I'm not going to support that. I understand why you would do it, because you've got Congress to get through, and you're trying to get a lot of stuff done in 4 years. You don't have the opportunity to get reelected and stuff like that. But I haven't seen anything to really persuade Congress to cut spending or codify into the DOGE cuts, which was mostly waste, fraud, and abuse, or anything like that. And personally, I think it's a fantasy that the Senate rescission bill is going to significantly cut anything. I really just don't believe that. I mean, they were celebrating over, I think, $9 billion in DOGE cuts, which would fund the government for 12 hours. So that's nothing, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, so I'm curious about the details though, because I agree with a lot of what you just said. The omnibus bills are a problem because they just stuff it full of pork, and they stuff it with all these extraneous things, and then you never get to find out, hey, what do they think about this or that? They should view, and Tom Massey agrees with us, and so do people on the left, right? So, but we probably disagree on some of the spending cuts. So real quick, give me your thoughts on these three, right? So one is the Medicaid and SNAP cuts. I'm against them. They're about 1.1 trillion, and we're also doing tax cut for people making above $500,000. That's also 1.1 trillion. So I take that as just taking it from the poor and giving to the rich. If you didn't give them to the rich, then I say, okay, well, at least you're saving money, et cetera. So but I'm curious what you think about that. And then Progressive Ro Khanna, he found like 12 trillion in cuts, but you'd have to cut the Pentagon. I'm curious what you think about that. And things like oil subsidies. We give away $17 billion every single year to the oil companies. So what's your take on those three?
Well, I mean, it's complex, right? Obviously, all of these things are. As far as Medicaid and SNAP go, I think that we're, so this is my position. I think you and I will probably disagree with this, but I think it's the citizens' job to take care of each other, not the government. I don't trust government to do that. And they've shown historically that they're not only incapable of doing it, but they hold the ability to do it over your head to extract more labor and wealth from the population. That to me is unacceptable. Now, people in general will get the government that they ask for, and by asking for, I mean if you sit around, if you don't know your neighbor's name and don't talk to those people and go down there and help them, then you're going to get big government coming in trying to have these super wasteful Medicaid and SNAP benefits programs that take money out of your pocket, and that's exactly what they do. The problem is, it is a legitimate problem, and it's not being addressed. I tell people this on my shows all the time. Just because you don't like somebody's solution to a problem doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And if you pretend it doesn't, then people that you disagree with, or even that are bad actors, are going to come in and solve that problem. What I haven't heard is any kind of legitimate replacement for that, right? And it's the same as Obamacare. I believe the Republican Congress voted 63 times over a 10-year period or so to repeal Obamacare when they never had the votes to do it. They had the votes 2 times in 2019, and they voted twice to end it, and 7 and 9 Republicans respectively voted to keep it, right? These people are full of it. None of them actually want to solve any of these problems, because solved problems don't get out the vote. When it comes to tax cuts, That to me is the wrong conversation. We should be talking about cutting spending, right? If you cut spending, there's no need for these taxes. But because these people in Washington refuse to even participate in that conversation at all, then we're never going to get that, right? I mean, this is you and I having a conversation where we agree about 95% of stuff. We just disagree on how to solve it. But the reality of the situation is that nobody in Washington representing us even cares about solving this problem.
Yeah. So look, you're right that we have plenty to disagree on there, and if we sat down and figured out how to do Medicaid and SNAP or how to fix for those issues, that would be a super interesting conversation. We have limited time here.
Well, the way I would solve it is I would stop letting churches get tax-free status if they don't solve these problems, because that's the reason they're getting tax-free status. Am I right?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting idea, and that's why it's important to have these conversations. So, but let's keep going. What did you think about? So I don't know if you saw, but I asked them to cut the Pentagon. They said they'd do it, and I was thinking, well, I'll believe it when I see it, right?
Sure.
And then they didn't. They added to it. What was your take on that?
Well, I guess the question is, what would you cut from the Pentagon?
Yeah, easy. They can't pass an audit. They say, I don't know where at least 400 billion is. Then I'm going to give you 400 billion less until you figure out where the money's going.
I think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, honestly, they haven't passed an audit, I think, since 2000. Is that right? I think that's what it is.
No, they've never passed an audit since they started auditing the Pentagon. They've never once passed one.
That's not shocking to me, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, look, the sole function of the government is to protect the homeland, right? And I know that there are a lot of people who are either pacifist or non-interventionist, or people that are just, I guess, nihilistic about government being able to be trusted to do these things. And I understand that. I mean, the amount of damage that George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and their entire crew did to this country, where we can't look at a country like Iran and say there's no way, and the world agrees, there's no way, even Saudi Arabia is like, you can't let them have nukes. And this is the conversation we should have been having in '96 when North Korea finally developed a bomb. Instead, Clinton was allowing China into the World Trade Organization with no caveats at all, as well as bombing Iraq for no reason and getting involved in balkanization for no reason. That had nothing to do with us, but a nuclear North Korea has to do with a lot of people. We had a lot of opportunity there, especially since China was begging to get into the WTO. And all we had to do was say, okay, you make sure North Korea doesn't get nukes. That's the standard. If they get them, then you're out of the WTO, period. And that would have been a good deal. But we don't do that. That's American soft power, right? That's what we should be doing instead of using all this military. I agree with you. I think the Pentagon's got to answer for this stuff. And it's very patriotic in a lot of ways to root for the DOD, but I root for the soldier, because that's what I was, right? I root for the guy on the ground not getting sent to do stupid stuff, one, getting taken care of when he comes back home, and then ensuring that we're actually using the right kind of American power to influence the world.
Yeah, so Dan, so let's get to war, right? So Trump bombs Iran, and at that point, I was super pissed. And he said anti-war, and you're not anti-war if you start a war. Now, he did then demand a ceasefire and got one from Israel. For the moment being, their defense minister today was threatening to end the ceasefire. So first, give me a sense of how you reacted to both of those events.
Yeah, so I would have done that as well, given what I know about that situation for sure. And I think, it's hard to argue with the results. I don't like to do that necessarily. Start from the outcome and work backwards when you're assessing something, because who knows if they actually knew. Sometimes people get lucky. I don't think Trump got lucky here. Nobody wants a nuclear Iran. Remember from the first administration, the Abraham Accords were a very good idea. He's trying to, for lack of a better phrase, weaponize the economic interests of Middle Eastern countries so that they'll stop participating in this 7th century nonsense and move into modernity. It's very smart. That's what MBS is trying to do as well, and we should try to help these people do that. Now, and if Iran wants to continue doing this stuff, then the global community's got to deal with them in some way. And I'll say this as well. When it comes to the Middle East, ceasefire is always appended with "we'll see," right? I mean, there's no end to that situation until there is one, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I would have done the same thing as him, but I do understand the criticism as well. Is why I said George W. Bush and his cronies man, the damage they did, where we can't look at a country like Iran and everybody agree, like, no, we can't allow that. Like, let's not do any boots on the ground anywhere, but that can't happen. And people's minds right now can't even conceptualize that because of how much their trust was abused from for the last 25 years, right?
Yeah. That's right. So Dan, let me push back on a couple of things. It's not a debate. I kind of want to see where you're at these days, so it's more informational. But I'm curious. Like, so with the nukes, I mean, Netanyahu's been telling us they're going to have nukes within a couple of months since 1996, right? Load of crap. So they were enriching uranium more. I think they were using that as leverage to get us back into the peace treaty that we had. But they had no bomb. Right, and they were at least, even Netanyahu admitted afterwards, at least a year away from having the bomb to put the uranium in. At least our own intelligence said they actually weren't even developing a bomb. Since 2003, they stopped it, and the Ayatollah did a religious edict saying nuclear weapons are terrible and no one should ever have them. So, like if you said to me, Iran is about to have a nuke, or you do this bombing, okay, that's an interesting question. But Iran wasn't about to have a nuke. It was largely propaganda. So that's why I wouldn't have done the bombing in the first place. And the other thing is, Dan, then it comes with risks, right? So in this case, it turned out okay for now because it didn't devolve further. But what if Iran sank one of our ships? Oh, then that's it. We're off to a gigantic war just like Iraq.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a hypothetical, and it's one that I don't really think is necessary, to be honest, because we've got recent memory of how they respond when we do something like this. We sent a switchblade through Soleimani's forehead, and they did nothing, right? And so it was publicized this time that they called ahead to let people know, and U.S. military by proxy, that those rockets were on the way. That happened with the Soleimani thing as well. You can reach into your DoD contacts and find that out. As far as Iran's ability and the timeline on when they would get a bomb, when they've established that they want, when they say it openly, they also say death to America and all this stuff. Certainly, part of it is barking, but this is what we said about North Korea through the 80s and 90s. We said, oh, they just rabble-rouse from time to time so people will notice them and they can negotiate. And now they've got bombs, right? So, like, at what point do you interdict that? I think it's a fair debate to have. At what point should we step in and make sure it doesn't happen? We messed it up pretty badly with North Korea. We had a lot of leverage against them, especially since they're basically a Chinese proxy, and never used any of that. We thought we would negotiate one-on-one with them. Even Trump, to be fair, thought he was going to negotiate one-on-one with that guy, and I don't think that was smart either. I don't think that's something that we can do in the Mideast. But you don't want to wait until the bomb exists. And I'll say something else. You talk about risk. A lot of people on I guess you could say the anti-war side, although I don't think anybody's actually purely anti-war. People just are anti-wars they disagree with. But let's say that for the sake of this conversation, one of the comments was that Iran has escalatory dominance in the region. No, they don't. They could certainly do stuff that might provoke us in the region, but we could wipe that country out in a couple of weeks if we wanted to without boots on the ground. We've got the munitions to do that. Not that we would or should. I'm not making a statement that we should, but Iran is going to operate in its own best self-interest. And they're not a rational actor. They're trying to buy time so they can get a bomb, in my opinion. This is the intelligence that I've seen. And you can, talk to Persian people that have escaped that regime, and they probably would agree with you, right? So I tend to listen when people bring up things like, excuse me, socialism or communism has never been done the right way or whatever, and I hear somebody that's come from one of those countries tell me the evils of it, I tend to listen to the person that has the experience.
Yeah, I think they're a terrible regime, but there's a dichotomy here where we say they can't even, they're so incompetent they can't even strike back. And they kind of have shown that a bunch of times, right? You're right about the Soleimani, they didn't really strike back. Here, they didn't really strike back, et cetera. But we're saying, but at the same time, they're so super sophisticated that they could have a nuclear bomb any second. So I'm way more skeptical. But I do want to go back to one other question that's important, because I want to know where your head's at. And a rough sense of where you think MAGA is, for loosely speaking, right? Where's the red line for you, Dan? So let's say that it had kept going, right? And Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz and hit one of our ships, and drone strikes on our troops, and et cetera. And then we strike back, and then like, is there a point where you go, wait, this is too much war? We said anti-war, and now we're knee deep in it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't support a boots on the ground situation in that country, no matter what happened, because I know I've done it and it doesn't work. There's no way that a bunch of white faces march into Tehran and change that situation ever. That will, at no point in all of human history will that ever be effective. So it's a cost benefit analysis. With regard to the Strait of Hormuz, China is never going to allow that to happen. They would lose a lot of money. So it's just not going to happen. But it's something I like to have the conversation. I like to flush this all out because people have assumptions about this. Like if you're an anti-war person or you're a neocon or you're this or that, no matter what you are, if you don't actually have the conversation and say, here are the cards on this side and here are the cards on this side, here are the potential moves, strategy, et cetera, then we don't really know any of this stuff, right? People kind of shy away from this debate or they think it's adversarial to have the conversation and go through the paces of this. I don't think so. And people seem to think that this specifically, I think to your point, is dividing MAGA. I guess I'm not really sure what people mean when they say MAGA, to be honest, anymore, just like I'm not sure what people mean when they say Republican or Democrat. Those words are completely meaningless to me now. I think people want the thing that they're a part of to be something, and I'm not always sure that it is. I'm sure actually that it's not usually what it is. I'll settle for this anti-leftist coalition, I guess, or maybe that's not even the right way to put it, but this like anti-woke coalition that voted for Trump or maybe against Kamala, either way. The group that would or is right now probably and should probably fracture along some lines. They don't agree on everything, nor should they, because it's a very diverse coalition, but they agreed on a couple of things like public safety, keep your hands off our kids. We don't want new wars, protracted stuff like that. And I've said this in the past, but this new coalition, it rose to defeat an installed candidate that they felt was undemocratic and unjust. That's my opinion. And the illegal immigration stuff, they rose to defeat that as well. And it had nothing to do with the old right versus left stuff. I don't think it was about that. I mean, you could see from the polling that it wasn't about that. So this new coalition will probably fracture and grow into what may become the new left and the new right, or parts of the new left and the new right, whatever it happens to be. We're always going to have those two things. My hope is that the extremists on the right that are popping up now, these people that think that Jews are the source of all the world's problems, these 8 million people, or that women are the worst because they couldn't get a date in high school, so now women have no value. This is not absolute nonsense. Then the grifters who are making money on that, and then the pacifists who I think are so rooted in this anti-war stuff that they can't see the need to prevent evil. I hope they all kind of go back to being quiet to some degree. I actually, the one that I would hang on to is the pacifists, because I like that they drag us, or at least make people question the motive of going to war. I think that's a very useful thing. But the rest of these people that are just, I think, bad actors, I hope they go away, and I hope that this new coalition splits off at some point, becomes a real right and a real left, and they, the people that went to the extremes maybe kind of come back a little bit and start talking to each other again, because otherwise we don't really have a country anymore. We just have a bunch of people standing around yelling at each other.
Yeah. So super last thing here, Dan. So I went on a progressive show that I generally agree with, and we have a conversation just like this. Hey, where's your hat at these days? Where's my hat at these days? It kind of devolved into a debate, but Kyle Kulinski said something that I want to run by you, because I genuinely don't know what you're going to say about this. I mean, you partly answered it there, so you give me a little bit better sense of it, but I think you've said some stuff that's the opposite on your show, but I'm not sure. So let me run you this clip and then get your reaction to it.
The only people who are sincere that I will grant you, Cenk, is libertarians, so Thomas Massey and Dave Smith, because libertarians have a track record, like Ron Paul did, of being very principled, but everybody in MAGA, or 99% of them, will bend the knee, just like 99% of the ones in Congress have already bent the knee.
So, Dan, what's your reaction to that?
I mean, obviously it's hyperbole, and that's all that guy does is speak in hyperbole, and you can tell from his hair. But yeah, I think libertarians are sincere. They prioritize individual liberty above all else, and we need that guy around for sure. We need them advocating for the individual. That's what this country is all about. I do think there are a lot of cultists in the MAGA thing, like the people that are out there supporting the big beautiful bill. 12 months ago, they were talking about how omnibus bills are bad, right? no question. And then you see these smaller fractures that happen. So Iran gets bombed, and Trump makes an offhanded comment about regime change. Now, that was for an audience of one. That was for the Ayatollah, right? To say, don't attack us because we will light you up. And I think, that's how Trump operates. Whether you think that's smart or not is not the question, but that's what happened. And a lot of people, instead of being, adult human beings with brains that function properly and knew that Trump was playing the game there, said, oh yeah, regime change might be an option. Like, what are you, Lindsey Graham? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So, your principles should not in any way rely on any other person. Otherwise, they're not principles, right?
Yeah. See, that's a interesting, nuanced answer. That's what I expected from you, Dan. I didn't know which way you were going to go, but I expected nuance. So me, you, and Kyle, all of us agreed libertarians are principled. They have an important role. We might not be libertarians, but we appreciate their role in this spectrum. And you agreed that there is some cultists in MAGA, and they shift along with whatever Trump says. I agree with that. Certainly, Kyle agrees with that. Where you and I split from Kyle is, there's also people who are principled, and they have different principles, and they're not necessarily going to go with everything Trump says. But look, we're all going to find out throughout these next 4 years. And so here you've clearly enunciated some things that you agree with on Trump, and things that you disagree with. So listen, brother, I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate that we have it in a level-headed way where you go, okay, I think this and you think that, and everybody gets to hear it out. So
sure.
Thanks.
If we weren't on TV, I'd probably swear a lot more, but that's just how I talk, I'm doing my best over here.
Yeah, me too, brother, me too, believe me. But I've been on Drinking Bros podcast, a Citizen podcast, so you should check that out, where we do curse more. All right, Dan, thanks for joining us again, appreciate it, brother.
Yes, sir, have a good night, man.
You too. All right, up next is Jesse Merl. He was also someone that I talked to, and we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to bring Jesse on, also a right-wing podcaster. Let's see what he has to say. We got another fun interview for you guys. Young Turks interviewed Jesse Merl before the election, right-wing podcaster, and we had a debate about whether it should be Trump or not. Wanted to check back in with him and see how that's going and what he thinks so far. Jesse on Fire is his show. Jesse, welcome back, brother.
What's up, dude? I'm not right-wing, dude. I don't fall into categories. I'm just a person who says things on the internet.
Okay, fair enough. But you voted for Trump, right?
I did vote for Trump, though. Yeah, I did.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, Jesse. First, broad. How do you think he's doing so far?
I mean, honestly, for me, at any point, if you ask me how's leadership in the country doing, I would always tell you it's a mixed bag. I would say I feel like 1,000 times more comfortable with the direction of the country than I did 4 years ago. I just think that, like, I mean, you have to ask. I feel like there's so much going on that to answer kind of high level is challenging, because it's like, I mean, which part are we talking about? We just bombed another country, which I certainly didn't vote for. But I guess now you kind of look at what's the outcome going to be, still to be determined if that's a good thing, bad thing. The immigration thing, I just heard today that he's talking about taking away birthright citizenship, which I definitely don't agree with. But I think overall, in terms of a lot of the things that are happening, I agree with. But I would say those are the two things that I would say I am challenged with in the recently.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, and it is nuanced. There's things that I've agreed with on Trump, like for example, when he told Israel, "Bring the jets back, do not keep bombing Iran." I was like, okay, good, thank God. And so far the ceasefire has held. Cross your fingers. But okay, let's talk about war. So that you mentioned that. I was definitely against him bombing Iran. Were you against it before he did it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then he did something I didn't expect, which is that he pulled back, and so we'll see if that holds. But what'd you think of the pullback?
So I thought that's kind of my experience, kind of watching him operate in the last since he's been president. At least when it comes to international affairs, has been interesting because it's like I've recognized that he does have a plan in a lot of cases, and in order for him to be able to execute on the strategy that he's trying to put in motion, him and his inner circle need to be the only people that kind of know what's going on. I thought with the tariffs, I thought he'd lost his mind, and then it turned out that what ended up happening is he got us these much better deals on our trade deals with a bunch of countries, and then in this case, when he bombed Iran, that seemed incredibly reckless. But then when the outcome ends up being a ceasefire and potentially Iran absent their ability to enrich uranium, I'm like, I mean, if this thing holds, he obviously knows what he was doing better than I did. I mean, I still think dropping bombs on any foreign country, especially one with a really strong military like Iran, at least, strong for the region. I mean, you have to make some really, really like ballsy calculations on what their responses are going to be. And I mean, at least thus far, it seems to be working out. If the ceasefire holds and they end up, in a better spot without enrichment capabilities, it's probably going to end up being a good thing. It's just to be determined, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. So look, I wouldn't have done the strikes under any circumstance because it involves risk and like not insignificant risk. Because what if they bomb one of our ships? Oh my God, what if they're successful and they sink a ship? Oh, then it's over. We're going to go full bore into Iran and it's going to be an epic disaster, right? So I had those concerns, apparently you had those concerns. So let me ask you what your red line is, Jesse. So far, if it turns out this is all that happened and he gets this ceasefire and Iran and Israel don't ever hit each other again, Gaza's a whole nother thing, right? But if he stopped that, I get it. I get people saying, hey, maybe it worked. Maybe he destroyed their facilities. They didn't really hit us back, and Iran and Israel are not in a war anymore. Okay, if, great. But if it doesn't go that way, do you have a red line? Is it boots on the ground? What else would happen where you go, oh, no, this is not the anti-war thing that I signed up for?
Oh, that would be a big problem if we started deploying troops. But I don't think he's going to do that. But yeah, I mean, certainly if we started deploying troops in the Middle East, I'm not one of these guys that is going to make my opinions based on which politician is telling me what we're doing. I definitely do not think we should have troops on the ground in a new war in the Middle East. That would be a big problem for me. But again, unless he did that, it's just kind of all hypotheticals. I just don't think he would do that. But yeah, that would be certainly, I mean, I wouldn't even say that there's necessarily a red line that exists because I wouldn't have supported him bombing them in the first place. But apparently, he knew what he was doing. Did you see, by the way, the video of those bunker busters that went straight down that ventilation pipe? I saw that yesterday and I was like, at least at some point we could just everybody set everything aside and just marvel at what humans are capable of in terms of technological advancement. It's unfortunate that we focus all that energy on just, technology that destroys things as opposed to others, but pretty unbelievable what.
Yeah, the only thing that bothers me about that is, look, it's an incredible feat. They flew 36 hours straight. They refueled a couple of times, and then they drop it right down the shaft if that video's right. And so that's all amazing. I just don't like politicians taking credit for it. If it turns out that, hey, you destroy their uranium facility and they never go to war, okay, you could take credit for that. But like, you didn't fly the plane, brother. Same thing with Obama when they killed bin Laden. I was like, oh, what a courageous act. I'm like, really? Wouldn't it have been pretty, wouldn't every president say, yeah, go kill bin Laden? Is there a president that would have said, no, don't kill bin Laden?
So in that case, actually, I think Obama had to make a really ballsy call, and only because that particular situation, I just have gotten sucked into a million rabbit holes of reading about, the things that led up to it, and it's like, I mean, they just the level of intelligence that they had that it was going to be Osama bin Laden was not even remotely close to what Obama would have felt comfortable acting on normally, and where the raid was so close to one of the main. It was almost like I guess in America it'd be like, oh God, what's it? It's basically like a military academy. It was right there, and they have nukes, dude. Pakistan, we can't mess around with Pakistan, and so it was a really ballsy call. I mean, I guess you could kind of say the same thing about Trump, doing these Iran strikes, but again, with the Obama one, it's like we have the benefit of hindsight. He was there. We didn't do some reckless attack on some random house in Pakistan that did not have Osama. And, so I think I can just praise Obama as having made a really great call. In this case, we still don't know,
Yeah, and they didn't have a nuclear weapon in Iran. So that was another reason not to do it. But so they were enriching uranium, this long story. But you were against it, I was against it, got it. So I wanna ask you a little bit more about Trump in a second, but I'm gonna play you a clip here from, so I went on a left-wing show and we're gonna have a conversation like this. Hey, where are you at? Where am I at? And kind of a debate broke out, right? I'm not doing this like as a aha or anything because I don't know what you're gonna say about it. So Kyle Kulinski is an old ally. We agree on a great number of policy issues. I think almost all the policy issues. But he has a certain view, and a lot of people on the left do, of MAGA. And you're an interesting cat because you're saying you're not even a right-wing podcaster, right? And you just make it, but you did vote for Trump. So I just want to run the clip and then get your view of how the right wing sees it, because Kyle and I are not in the right wing, right? We didn't vote for Trump. So I'm curious what you make of this. Let's actually play the second clip of the hosts and the voters. Let's watch that.
You're saying it's all fake, and you think that all these right-wing hosts are not actually anti-war, that this is, but they've been telling their audience now for months that the war is a terrible, let me ask the question, and that the war is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea, and how would that strategy work? So they get their audience totally against the war, then they capitulate to Trump.
Let me tell you how that strategy works.
How did that help them be pro-war?
Let me explain. Let me explain how that strategy works.
My answer to your question is yes, by the way. In 99% of cases, they are just lying and they'll go and suck Trump off again.
So
that's a real disagreement.
They postured as anti-war because they thought it was a good electoral strategy. So now they have some track record laid of claiming that Trump is the pro-peace candidate, blah, blah, blah.
And why was it a good strategy? Because their voters are anti-war.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, the polling is wildly at odds with you, Cenk, on that.
Okay, again, I'm not trying to pick fights here or anything like that. It's Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball, and again, I agree with them on policy, an overwhelming amount. But I'm curious your take on that. So there's the hosts, and Kyle says, no, 99% of them aren't really anti-war. And then there's the voters, and that's where Crystal said, no, they don't really, they're not gonna disagree with Trump. So what's your sense?
What? Okay, so it's so funny that you picked those two because I spend a fair amount of time. I mean, if someone wanted to look at my channel and be like, well, what evidence is there that this guy's hardcore MAGA? They're all, well, he certainly shits on Kyle Kulinski sometimes. Sorry, I was not supposed to swear. That's my fault, you guys.
That's okay, it's okay.
But I mean, Kyle Kulinski on X looks like a psycho. Like he looks like an unhinged person who is totally incapable of looking at things through any kind of lens that is not, I mean, everyone's lying. So everyone who says, I don't want to bomb children in the Middle East, or I don't want us spending our tax dollars to kill people in the Middle East. Hey, all of us, it's a big phony joke because exactly the point you made. It's like, what's the strategy there, guy? Like, what possible reason would there be? And it's like, there is a level of like mind twist that people can get to where they genuinely just will apply malice to everything when there is a group over here in this, like, I don't even know how to even put myself in there, because it's the exact opposite of how I think. You know, it's like the best example of that is always in the abortion issue, in my opinion. It's like, you have this side over here who is anti-abortion, and they genuinely believe that they are trying to save the lives of babies. And they look at this group over here and they're like, they want to murder babies because whatever. And then this over here, they're like, they want to control my body. It's like, dude, this one doesn't want to get forced into having a child when she's 17 years old, when she has plans to get her master's degree and go do a bunch of stuff. Like, why are you going to force her to have the kid? And you guys, you think you want to control your body? They don't want dead babies. Like, so that's what I'm saying is like, if you're like too blinded to be able to see the opposing sides, like a human, this is like Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball are like the most furthest example of that I could possibly imagine. Like, what are they talking about? Why would anyone lie about being anti-war?
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I wouldn't have picked them as the most out there. I think there's a lot of people that are further out than Crystal and Kyle in terms of hating MAGA and not believing them and stuff. And I didn't know that you thought that about Kyle, but that's interesting because I mean, Kyle and I both agree he shouldn't have dropped a bomb, and apparently you agree that he shouldn't have dropped a bomb. Kyle and I and Crystal and I probably agree, like I said, on 95% of issues. So, but you don't view me and him in the same way. So I didn't expect that. So that's interesting. So since Kyle and I have very similar policy stances, why don't you view us the same way?
Oh, I can give you that immediately. Okay, so it's because I can tell when people have slipped into this is some kind of us versus them game, and then they're incapable of looking at things objectively. So like, as an example, when this guy in Minnesota went and shot those lawmakers, right? The whatever guy. And there's this big dispute. It's all, is this guy a MAGA terrorist or is he a Democrat? And it's like, he's neither, he's a crazy person, okay? Like, it doesn't matter what his politics are. If you go and look at Kyle Kalinski's X account throughout that thing, he was like, he had to be right that this guy was a MAGA guy, even when it turned out that this guy had been appointed to a 4-year work development force by Tim Walz personally, and that his wife worked for Tim Walz. It's like, and to be clear, I'm not trying to make you take credit for him. I'm saying he's a crazy person, but he's definitely not MAGA. And then just go look, like he actually put a post up after that information came out, trying to convince his user that still, even though that was out there, don't let these MAGA people confuse you. He is a MAGA right-wing lunatic. And you're like, that's embarrassing, guy. Like, that you want to die on that hill, dude?
So that's really interesting, because I agree with both of you guys. I agree with Kyle that he's far more likely to be MAGA. But I agree with you that it doesn't really matter. They're all nuts. Like Muslim fundamentalists, the Jewish fundamentalists who killed Yitzhak Rabin, they're all crazy.
They're crazy people.
Yeah, they're not mentally well. No one who's mentally well goes and kills other people and goes to jail for the rest of their lives. It does, right? And the mass shooters, they don't have any political ideology, except the mass shooters who do and leave behind a treatise. So one of us about insurance, that wasn't a mass shooter, but a CEO shooter. And then you got the ones about race, etc. Anyway, all right, last thing here, Jesse. Give me one or two things, if you have them, outside of war, where you've thought, I wish Trump hadn't done that.
Oh, I mean, I would say the application of the kind of crackdown on immigration, that's a big one for me. Like, I mean, so just since we talked about this earlier, the birthright citizenship, like, the issues that I tend to have a strong opinion on are ones that I have looked at personally in my own life and been like, that's wrong. If this is going to be the way that what you're proposing is applied to this family right here, that I know very well, I know their situation, that's wrong. I mean, it's just bottom line. And like the birthright citizenship thing. So because I do, I'm heavy in jiu-jitsu. And so I know a lot of Brazilians who are here on, work visas, green cards, or have gained citizenship. So I know more about that actual process than a lot of people, which probably kind of helps shape my opinion on the entire thing. But if you're telling me that a person who has done the paperwork is here legally on visas or on a green card, they have a job, they pay their taxes, they have a child, that child should not be a citizen of the United States? That makes no sense to me at all. It's like, well, what are they, where should they be a citizen? Like they're like a person that just doesn't get citizenship? Like that doesn't make sense. My whole thing is like, on the flip side of the immigration thing, I also am looking at people who are doing immigration correctly. They file their paperwork. They know they have until this date to be here. Then they have to update it. They have to go do it, and they're doing all of those things. And so I don't understand the argument against that. It's like if people are not, I mean, we have rules. If you want to change the rules, change the rules. But the rules state you have to do this, this, and this. And if they're not doing that, they snuck in. They're not doing that. Whatever. Like. The idea that it's inhumane for us to, enforce laws that are already there doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That said, there's also a matter of allocation of resources and optics and just like how does it make me feel? And when we're going after gang members, people with criminal records, people who might be terrorists who came over when they weren't vetting anybody, it's like, dude, release the hounds on those guys and drag them out by their hair. I don't care about that at all. But I don't, when I started seeing videos of them going in, into like, I don't know, places where, bottom line, if someone's here and they're working and they've been working for years and, you raid those places, to me, here's exactly what I would do. Is instead of raiding and then deporting, I would send people there and the first meeting would be to educate them on how they get up to date on their paperwork. And then you give them 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long it is. And if they're not up to date on their paperwork, when you come back, then you deport them. Like educate them, teach them how they're supposed to do this legally so that they can get within the, get legal. Mm-hmm. And then if they still don't do it, ship them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so last thing here. So today we had a story that's similar to the one of the things that you were complaining about, which is there was a woman who went to hear her asylum hearing. She was doing all the paperwork right, and she had gotten paroled into the country, and then she has a 6-year-old. Turns out the 6-year-old has leukemia, so they snatch her up from the hearing, and then the kid wets himself, and they won't let him change it, and he can't get leukemia. Like, what are we doing here? Like, and so like, then people aren't going to go to asylum hearings, right? People aren't going to.
Right, yeah, that particular issue I have specific insight on because, how specific? Someone very high in Homeland Security is a person who's a friend of mine, and they actually talked to me about this particular issue, and it was like, he's like, I mean, he's a Trump voter too, but he's like, I think that there are some things that are being done that like, are kind of on the margins, and one of them was that it's not just that they were going and snatching them up at the hearings, they were actually canceling their appointments and not telling them. So like they were canceling the appointment, they wouldn't tell them, so they would show up, and like the whole purpose of this thing is like to give them just to know where to get them, which is absurd to me because like you're snatching up the people who are trying to do the right thing. That's my whole thing. Is like if they are trying to do things right, allow them to do things right. If they're trying to skirt the system, then round them up and ship them, dude. But the thing with the trial, that makes no sense to me at all. They're trying to do the right thing, let them try to do the right thing. You think that MS-13 is coming to their appointment? They're not coming. You know what I mean?
I never heard it that way. That's a really good point. Here's who's not coming to their asylum hearing: MS-13.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, then super last thing is, I was gonna finish that thought with, Rogan said this, and I'm curious if you kind of agree with it. He said, look, I think a lot of people voted for, close the border and send home the undocumented immigrants who are criminals, got convicted of a crime, gone. We don't want them, right? But if you go into the middle of the country and you start going to Home Depots and restaurants and factories and stuff, and people have been here 10 years, 20 years, they're with their kids, and you start taking them out, people are going to find it cruel. And he's like, I'm out. I don't want that. And I think a lot of people don't want that. And so, do you think Rogan's kind of got it right for what people voted for and didn't vote for?
Oh yeah, I'm aligned with him on that. And but just for the record, we're spending a lot of time about me kind of going, okay, here's where I would push back on Trump. But to be clear on this particular issue, I'll tell you the best way to ensure that you're going to have people signing off on what could have potentially been seen as like inhumane type of immigration stuff. It's like, all you have to do is just go start a riot in LA. Like give the visual of the pushback against this are burned cop cars again. And like, because the whole thing is like, just do it the right way. If you're making an attempt to do it the right way, then as far as I'm concerned, we should allow them to do the right thing. But throwing a temper tantrum and burning police cars is the fastest way to lose me in 1 second, where I'm like, all right. I mean, if this is the face of your guys' opposition to this, like, I'm not gonna help you. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I realize how idiotic that is. So I could catch myself in those thoughts. Most people can't. And so they'll start being like, grab them. And they think that when they're not really thinking it through. And you're like, okay, but that's kind of like, I mean, are you sure that's really what you want to do? And the way the way that they think about it is they're like, did you see what they did in LA? Just who cares? And it's like, I mean, I understand that way of thinking. I have to kind of catch myself to not do that personally.
Yeah, but, no, I get that, Jesse. Because look, I said in the coverage, I don't think they should have come in and done what they did, ICE. I don't think that they should have fired into the crowd with the flashbang grenades. I don't think they should bring the Marines in. But don't burn the Waymos. Don't burn American flags. Are you nuts? That's going to make people not like you. When you burn the American flag and you bring the Mexican flags only, then it sets people up to go, well, okay, then go back, right? So
did you see?
Like it just hurts our side.
Yes, exactly. Did you see that vice mayor in? I don't remember. It's like one of those areas in LA who asked Florencia 13 and the 18th Street gang why they're not attacking ICE and I thought you were about protecting your territory. I was like, she needs to go to jail, dude. Like you sent her to jail. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, she made me want to pull my hair out. Like, don't ask the gangs to show up to protests. Yeah. I mean, just have some common sense. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the undocumented immigrants who are just trying to work for a living and do the right things, as you were saying, et cetera. All right, you know what? I want to give people the proper context. I said last thing a couple of times, but I don't, I've asked you to criticize Trump on the things that you don't agree with, but you made a good point there. So tell me something you really like about Trump and what he's done so far.
Oh man, you want to know what I love that he does is if everybody would just set down their, whatever they think that they know about him and just allow him to do the thing where we all collectively celebrate the United States, where he's trying to do like the United States birthday, and all that stuff, and then do these events. Like that stuff really matters. Like that stuff really matters. If everybody would just like be able to get aligned and go 4th of July, we're all, United States. Like, oh my God, that was Kyle Kulinski. I forgot about that. Kyle Kulinski posted on his Instagram that on 4th of July, he's gonna be going to the No Kings protest part 2. And I was like, dude, you geek, okay? Why don't you get an American flag and go to a barbecue, guy? Like you're on 4th of July. Okay, I'm not talking about like it's unpatriotic. I'm like, do you think that you're gonna be recruiting anybody who's cool if your tagline is like, we need to protest on 4th of July? You're like, get out of here, guy. Like, just stop being such a nerd. But like in terms of what Trump's done, get in there.
Yeah,
I mean, right?
No, I don't know if I agree with you on that. Okay, but
come on, dude.
Okay, so listen, here's what I would say. So I think the No Kings protests were good. Nothing bad happened there. It was just Americans showing up to say
nothing bad.
Yeah, no, like at the LA one, the Waymos got burned. That's bad, right?
That's a completely different thing.
Yeah, and No Kings protest, nothing got burned. There was no property damage. It was just Americans expressing their point of view. If you don't do it on 4th of July, I could see that being patriotic in some way. The only thing I would say is, I don't know if I'm gonna find a middle ground between you guys, and I don't need to, but if you're going to go to a protest on 4th of July, please bring your American flag, right? Like,
there you go.
Right? Because then you say, hey, listen, I love America and I want to help it make it better, right? And the way you make it better is by coming to protests like this and saying, hey, I'm not in favor of this and I'm not in favor of that, I'm in favor of this, but I'm in favor of this because I love America and I brought the flag. And so look, I think that plays better for the whole country. And it at least, I mean, let me put it this way, Jesse, because I didn't think you were gonna say that, but would you at least?
I have something else that's like actually about Trump, but go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Would you hear him out more if they brought the flags?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they're burning flags versus like waving flags around, it's like they're waving flags around. I'm like, all right, so we just disagree on like what the word tyranny means and what like fascism means and your opinion on Trump. It's like, but at least, we're all aligned that America's, a good spot that you should be proud that you're a citizen of. But one thing that Trump did recently, actually, that again, is actually related to the Iran bombings, which we've obviously discussed, I was not in favor of, but when he apparently, so he deregulated the energy markets in the Midwest, like within the last couple months. And that kind of, I didn't even see it until after he bombed Iran, and they started threatening, energy. What's the name? The Strait of
Hormuz.
Whatever. They were going to put 20% of the oil, global oil, distribution in jeopardy. And that's what someone was like. That's probably why he did the deregulation in the Midwest a couple months ago in preparation. He knew he was going to do this, and I was like, man, that's a strong move right there. Like if he knew, if it's because listen, like Israel starts bombing Iran out of nowhere, and then we do this strike, and like the idea that was not coordinated between our two countries is absurd, which means that he probably did the deregulation in preparation for them threatening our oil supply, which is pretty sharp, dude. The guy knows he knows what he's doing. He's executing a plan. We'll find out, dude. He still isn't even like, what is he, 6 months in? So we got a long time. We'll be able to give him like a really good, grade, like a report card within a few years.
Yeah, I'd be super surprised if he did that deregulation based on the bombing. But hey, I asked you to say something positive about Trump. You said it. Yep. So some things you like, some things you don't like. Hey, you're a person with.
But I like him a lot. Overall, I like him a lot. He's hilarious.
See, that's so interesting. You think he's funny and he loves America, and those are two things you love about him.
Totally. And so, no, listen. And I watch people like I watched a guy on Redacted that they had on who was talking about specifically. He was talking about the Iran bombings, and he clearly had much more background than I did. I think he might have been a former weapons inspector, and so I'm listening to his take. Still trying to kind of like, I don't know, take this information in and process of like, what do I think about what just happened? And he's saying, they did this. And then afterwards, he's like, well, and we all know that Trump is incapable of doing anything that's not about Donald Trump. He doesn't care about America. He doesn't care about peace. He only cares about Donald Trump. And I'm like, is that really how these people see him? It's bananas to me. It's like, because I know so many people who know him personally. Like, because, I'm like, in UFC circles. And so like, they like know him. They've like spent a lot of time with him. And all of them are like, these people have the most backwards, bizarre view of what he's actually like. And then Bill Maher went to dinner with him. Bill Maher hated Donald Trump and he couldn't even help it. He got back, he's all, listen, man, I had a really good time with him. He's not how I expected.
See, that's why I have these conversations. I could debate some of that and all the things you said that were positive about Trump, et cetera, but that's not the point. The point is, whether I talk to Kyle and Crystal or you and Dan Holloway, I'm getting your perspective. And I find it super interesting that you really like him as a person, you like that he loves the country, but you have issues with some of the things that he's doing. Okay, that's whether I agree or disagree, it's an interesting perspective. So thanks for sharing it, brother. I appreciate it. And if you watch Jesse on Fire, it's not just about politics. He also talks about culture and combat sports, as you might be able to tell from what he said. So check him out on Jesse on Fire. And thanks for joining us, brother. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, my dude.
All right. All right. Bring the country together, one conversation at a time. Or sometimes driving things apart. But we're trying. Okay, much love. We'll see you next time.